regular board meeting of the Dallas Independent School District Board of Trustees. I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. We're going to skip the moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance as we just conducted that in our last meeting. Board members present, starting on your left and my right. Trustee Foreman, Trustee Joyce Foreman, Trustee Dan Mitchkame, Second Vice President Elizabeth Jones, First Vice President Lou Blackburn, Trustee Nancy Bingham, Trustee Bernadette Nuttall, Trustee Eric Cowan, Trustee Mike Morath. Our Superintendent of Schools, Mike Miles, joins us, and I'm Miguel Solis, Board President. Si alguien necesita los servicios de un intérprete para escuchar la Junta en español, por favor, levante la mano. All right. I do believe we have a few public officials in the audience. I know that we did have
Yvonne Davis.
State Representative Yvonne Davis. Thank you for joining us here tonight. We appreciate it. And also Dallas County Schools Trustee, Dr. Kyle Renard. Thank you for being here as well. Do we see any more trustees? All right. I'd like to recognize also, as part of a consent agenda, we will consider approving donations, gifts, and grants from Dairy Max Incorporated, Dallas Theater Center, and Macy's. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to thank you all for your support of the students of Dallas Independent School District. At this time, we'd also like to share just a few of our district accolades. 2 teachers from Nancy J. Cochran Elementary were recognized for making a difference. Congratulations to Romulo Zaragoza, a 4th grade math teacher, and Robert Jacobs, a physical education teacher. Both were nominated as Life Changers by the National Life Group, an award that recognizes educators across the country who are making a positive difference in students' lives. 10 winners will be announced in the spring and will receive up to $10,000 to share with their school, so good luck to both of them. One of Woodrow's top teachers was honored by a local chamber organization. Denise Tucker was recently named Teacher of the Year by the East Dallas Chamber. She was recognized in an awards luncheon this weekend. Ms. Tucker is a career and technology teacher at Woodrow Wilson High School, where she teaches accounting and business principles in the Academy of Business. Congratulations to these outstanding educators. We appreciate their great work. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees, we would also like to say Happy Thanksgiving to all of our students, all of our staff members, and the community as well. And thank you very much. It's now time in our program where we recognize those students and staff who've made outstanding achievements and earned significant honors, and those individuals in the community who've made important contributions to Dallas ISD. Do we have any recognitions at this moment?
Yes.
All right.
Trustee Blackburn, Superintendent Miles, Principal Tiffany Hewitt, and Executive Director Isaac Career, please come forward. Mr. Michael Haggerty, Vice President of the HNTB Corporation, please come forward. The board is honored to present a certificate of recognition to the HNTB Corporation. HNTB Corporation is a nationally recognized and engineering, architectural, and planning firm partnering locally with the Yvonne A. Ewell Townview Magnet Center and Dallas ISD School to Business program. Last school year, 14 HNTB volunteers donated more than 750 hours to the program. Delighted with the support that her students were receiving from HNTB's Science and Engineering Magnet Principal, Tiffany Hewitt nominated the firm for the State Board of Education's Employers for Education Excellence Award. This award is given in 3 categories: gold, silver, and bronze, gold being the top award. Last month, HNTB was recognized with the Gold Award at the State Capitol.
I always like it when corporations or companies or organizations come and work with our students and help them to enhance and to expand their creativity, expand their knowledge about things. I had a chance to see this organization working with our students at Science and Engineering. And I've already told Dr. Hewitt that I am very partial to Science and Engineering because I had a son that graduated from there. And I can see that the students are still outstanding. Even after my son left, they are still outstanding at Science and Engineering. because they were able to work on a project for the rail system, DART rail system, and the idea and the plans they came up with was outstanding because of Dr. Hewitt, everybody else on the staff at HTMB. Yeah, you got a lot of alphabets, okay? But you're doing a great job, and I want you to keep doing a great job. As a matter of fact, while we were talking a little while ago, we came up with this bright idea. Bright idea. We have a few schools that are not being used, Mike Miles. We have one in particular that's not being used in District 9 in South Dallas. I know that this organization, working with this principal and the students at Science and Engineering, can come together and find a way to creatively reinvigorate Julius C. Fraser Elementary School. I think they can make it happen with our students. Imagine if our students go into a building, come up with an idea about how to repurpose that. I think, Dr. Smithko, I think we ought to be able to give them some kind of credit for that. I think they ought to be able to get local credit for redesigning the school, architectural designs and so forth. You guys, Mike Miles, you heard me say that. Fraser Elementary Schools. I want you guys to help talk about how we can let students repurpose Fraser Elementary School. I know you're going to do a great job with it. I'm already claiming it. But for right now, you guys got this gold award. Dr. Davis, come on down. I need you to attest to this. Dr. Davis, come on down. From the state level, Dr. Davis has something to do with this organization coming to help science and engineering. Has something to do with them getting this gold award from the State Board of Education. Even though she's not on the State Board of Education, she has something to do with making, it's in District 10, it's in your district? We're going to claim it, okay. But anyway, I appreciate all that you do to help Dallas ISD and Austin and while you're even here in the Dallas area, but I've talked enough. I've already claimed the project. Let me let you talk now.
Keep it real brief. Just want to say how thrilled we are that we can share with us, with the students, what we know and kind of grow the next generation of engineers and architects and urban planners. It's our passion. I work with a great bunch of co-workers, and to see what they do with the kids is truly amazing. So thank you. Appreciate the recognition, and we'll be back here next year.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. One more person. Mrs. Cisneros, stand up. A former SEM student who now works with this organization. He helped out with the project. Appreciate all you did for our students. Thank you. Okay, who's next?
Congratulations, Mr. Haggerty and the HNTB Corporation. This concludes our recognitions.
Oh, man, it's over?
Good job, Dr. Blackburn.
I like the Dr. Blackburn show. This segment now is for speakers who wish to address agenda items. Speakers are reminded that they are to address the board and not individual particular trustees. And trustees, I believe we have 2 agenda item speakers and 2 non-agenda item speakers. I know one is a non-agenda item speaker is a student, and we know we want to make sure she can get some sleep so she's got a Friday class. So if you don't have any reservations, I'd like to move those 2 people up. Say that again. She has homework. So yeah, we want to make sure that she can get her homework done. So if there are no reservations, we'll move those up as well. All right. Ms. Grant, will you please call the speakers' names?
The Dallas ISD Board of Trustees welcomes citizens, visitors, and employees to its meetings. To hold this meeting in an effective and orderly fashion, we ask members of the public to please conduct themselves appropriately. Any persons making personal, rude, disrespectful, or slanderous remarks or becomes boisterous while addressing the board shall be removed from the room by the police and security officers at the direction of the presiding officer without additional warning. I would like to remind each speaker you have 3 minutes to speak. When you arrive at the microphone, please state your name and address. Our first speaker is Kyle Renard, followed by David Lee.
Hello again, I'm Dr. Kyle Renard, and even though I am a DCS Dallas County Schools trustee, I'm not speaking to you in that role tonight. I'm speaking as a mom, a pediatrician, a member of Dallas Friends of Public Education, a member of the Our Community, Our Schools Coalition. Many of the recommendations I'm giving to you tonight are not flashy or modern. They could be even considered old school. However, there's much research which shows that these things help children succeed. And isn't that what we're all about? Research confirms that what happens outside schools and classrooms has a significant impact on student achievement. Poverty, while not an excuse, is a reality which must be faced head-on, its effects acknowledged and dealt with. A child worried about stresses at home and in his neighborhood, such as violence or a parent's employment situation, or who is hungry, may be less able to focus on learning. In my role as a member of the OCOS Coalition, we study the positive effects of the community school model with wraparound services. Community schools are anchors of the neighborhood where services are coordinated to improve the lives of children and families. Children, especially at-risk children, need stability in order to learn effectively. They need to know that the same teachers will be there for them day after day in order to build trust. A successful school has experienced teachers who stay at that campus, collaborate with their colleagues, and establish a stable, nurturing environment which is an inviting and safe place for all students to learn. We need to focus our efforts on creating this kind of atmosphere at every DISD school, beginning with the 43 IR schools. We must strive to retain and train our existing teachers and prevent turnover, which is damaging to our students. Class sizes should be reduced even below the state required levels, between 18 and 20 in elementary schools, 20 to 22 in middle schools, no more than 24 to 25 per class in high school. And I know that sounds very expensive, but we spend a lot of money other places, and I think it would really achieve great things for our students if we could really work on at least striving to those goals. This allows children in need to receive the extra attention they require to succeed. In a community school, whole families are known by the staff and teachers, and siblings may share teachers sequentially. An important part of the history of many families revolves around their neighborhood schools. That feeling of trust and belonging provides a safety net for at-risk children. We need an adequate number of counselors on each campus. Suicide and suicide attempts are serious matters and demand a concerted, deliberate, and immediate response. There is little in this world more important than the lives of our children. Early childhood education is important in order to prevent future IR schools. As a pediatrician, I've been involved with the Reach Out and Read program through the American Academy of Pediatrics. This program, which trains parents to read to their children at an early age, is initiated in the pediatrician's office and can and should be reinforced through schools.
Thank you. Your time
to
has
encourage children
expired.
to continue reading for pleasure. Thank you very
David
much.
Lee, followed by Robert Jones, Jr.
President Solis, trustees, Mr. Miles, good evening again. My name is David Lee, and I'm the Government Relations Liaison for Alliance AFT. Our office is located at 334 Center Street, Dallas, Texas, 75208. I'm here tonight to address Agenda Item 7A5, consider and take possible action to approve the amendment to Board Policy DEC Local, Compensation and Benefits, Leaves and Absences, which was pulled for a separate vote. First of all, we would like to thank Carmen Darville, Chief of Human Capital Management, and the administration for bringing this amendment to the board tonight. Alliance AFT opposed the reduction in local leave days from 5 to 3 in 2011, and we encourage you to restore them tonight. Dallas ISD is the only local school district we know of that does not offer employees 5 local leave days. 2 days may not seem like a lot, but if you're faced with personal or family illness, if you care for elderly relatives, or if you experience other situations requiring your presence during the school day, they are invaluable. It's very difficult to perform your job at a high level when faced with some of the challenges life throws at all of us from time to time, and more so when you don't have the leave days you need to correct those issues. Working in public education is extremely stressful. It often starts early and ends late, leaving little time for important personal and family matters. In some cases, we know of employees that use local leave days in order to catch up on paperwork and grading. Voting to approve this amendment will send a clear message that this board and administration value Dallas ISD employees and the sacrifices they make for our students. When you think about what they do for the children of our community, restoring 2 local leave days seems like a very small way to say thank you. We encourage you to pass this amendment. Thank you again for your time and your service to our community.
Robert Jones Sr., followed by Laura Andre.
I don't think Mr. Jones is here.
Our last speaker is Laura Andre.
Good evening, my name is Laura Andre, and I am a junior at Irma Rangel Young Women's Leadership Magnet School in Division 4. As you may already know, I recently began a petition outlining several issues affecting DISD teachers and solutions to alleviate these concerns, including increasing DISD teachers' pay and establishing less stringent rules and regulations on how they teach and plan lessons. As a student of a DISD high school, these issues have become increasingly important to me. Almost immediately after Mr. Miles became DISD's new superintendent, there was a noticeable change at my school. Not only have budget cuts affected deserving schools and teachers, but as a student, I have personally experienced some of these repercussions, including teacher reassignments and unfair terminations. Mr. Miles' reforms have taken away some of the few mentors in my life that I truly looked up to. The teacher-to-student ratio is becoming larger and larger, and there is less one-on-one time in the classroom, a time that I had grown to cherish. Our classrooms are no longer a creative and mentally stimulating environment, but instead anxiety-ridden, and our teachers are becoming more discouraged, some even fearing for their jobs. Another one of the drastic changes implemented by Mr. Miles was requiring our teachers to provide in-depth lesson plans that consist of learning objective and DOLs that are watering down the curriculum. DOLs do not ensure rigors, especially in an AP course. Instead of allowing our teachers to build hands-on lessons that encourage all levels of students to feel included and inspired to learn, these lesson plans enforce inclusion of very specific content and detailed timelines. According to the Dallas Morning News, even with the 3% raise they received over the summer, DISD teachers' salaries are still lower than they were 4 years ago. Also noted were more than 1,700 DISD vacancies at the end of Mr. Miles' first year, double the average of vacancies that DISD has seen in previous years. Although DISD may be tout that they offer high competitive salaries for its administrators and teachers, it has been shown that this is only because of the large number of veteran teachers that were tired after Mr. Miles was hired. I have witnessed a teacher that teaches 4 preps. They are required to produce 4 in-depth lesson plans and 4 DOLs every week. They spend 4 times the amount of time an average teacher spends grading papers and tutoring students. 4 classes of students to worry about, to lose sleep over. Now please explain to me how this veteran teacher, this courageous and downright awe-inspiring teacher, is somehow making the same salary as a teacher that is newly embarking on their teaching career. When last checked, my petition had over 1,700 people that are just as passionate about correcting these unacceptable changes as I am. I, my fellow students, our parents, board members, and teachers sincerely hope our voices and concerns can soon be acknowledged, as we are a singular, unified voice, one that is determined not to be stifled or ignored. Together we look forward to watching the Dallas Independent School District produce the future scholars and leaders of America that we all know it has the potential of doing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Andre. I believe Mr. Jones is here. Hey, Mr. Jones.
Miguel Solis for letting me speak.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry for being late, everybody, but I had to come anyway. Now, I want to say this. Mr. Mike Morath, still going back to 2012, it's all or nothing, right? I'm having problems with my kids, now it's all of them. My first grader, today, he watched TV all day, okay? You voted to close at school. You voted to close down in school because it was supposed to have been meeting the criteria, didn't meet the criteria. Now here's at Hernandez. There's a whole lot of problems at Hernandez. Board of Trustees, Mr. Miles, I'm not going to try to criticize you, but it ain't working. What you did at Dade, it's going on at a whole lot of schools, especially at Hernandez. Now today, something happened because they playing games with my kids. Ms. Foreman, you know I can't, it's hard for me to keep playing the games with the kids, but when you try to dumb down the kids so that you can pass your evaluation, and you mess with all the kids because the kids are kids. The problem, I talked to 2 teachers today on their personal cell phone, and they called me. I'm going to tell you, his name is Mr. McLemore, and he had another teacher. He need to be fired because you don't play with my little boy and try to train my little kid to be the dummy when he's not the dummy, because I train him myself. He's at the 5th grade. He just started teaching him algebra, and he blamed that on you. I said, well, that's a good thing, but last week he called me. He told me to teach him algebra. Okay, Mr. Solis, I love you to death.
Mr. Jones, just one second. I'm going to stop your time just for a second. Just address the board as a whole, and I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you after this as well, but please continue.
Okay. Board of Trustees, happy Thanksgiving. I love you all, and thank you for your service. My kids are having problems. I believe that it is stemming from your board. I believe that Mr. Mike Miles' problems, what he tried to solve, he is creating what he tried to stop. The teachers, especially the new ones, this guy said that this was his first year teaching. And I've been raising kids all my life. In my 1st grader, in my 5th grader, and I'm like, what's the use of them going to preschool, pre-K, in kindergarten, then when they start going through
Thank
1st,
you. Your
2nd,
time
3rd
has
grade,
expired.
now they dummies.
This concludes our speakers.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We're now on to individual board trustee district reports. Trustees, are there any reports? Trustee Foreman?
Thank you, Trustee Solis. District 6 held a community meeting on October the 27th, where there were approximately 100 people who came out to talk about transformation schools, career readiness, and we were very excited about that opportunity. Also, T.L. Marsalis held one of their annual meetings of community meetings in October, and they did very well too. T.L. Marsalis is also now one of the Imagine 2020 schools, and we look forward to seeing what actually happens with that campus. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Trustee Foreman. Trustee Mitchke?
Yes, I'm going to read a couple of short letters that were in the letters to the editor that summarize what people are thinking. This first one is titled Bryan Adams Shines. I recently attended Bryan Adams High School's open house. The school looked brand new. It was ship-shape, clean and tidy. The teachers were at their posts. The students were there too. The information exchange and enthusiasm between us and them certainly changed my view of what I expected to see. I learned they are learning to build robots. There's an international business club, a dance club, and a connection with Texas Instruments. The public school system is alive and functioning at Bryan Adams. For me, going back to high school was a learning experience. And then another person who wrote in and was at that same meeting. Bryan Adams makes us all proud. Sitting in the audience at Bryan Adams High School on Veterans Day, I was watching and listening to my grandson's primary choir singing Proud to be an American. At that moment, I was proud to witness such a wonderful community moment. Young ROTC students presented the flag, everyone standing and saying the pledge, and the girls' choir sang so beautifully. The cheerleaders from Hill were filled with energy, and the Sanger primary choir was brave and charming as it stood on such a big stage. Older people shared the stories of long ago attending Sanger. Mrs. Brown, the music teacher, encouraged the little ones and worked her magic. The principal showed obvious pride in his students and faculty. The Community should be proud of the students, teachers, and parents who all worked hard to create an evening of learning, participating, and having fun. This is a wonderful community. So there's a lot of enthusiasm on that campus and in the East Dallas community. But I want to read this other letter. And this letter, I think, has a message for all of us. 3 cheers for Riley Elementary School's Good Citizen Award Program. To get this award, students do not have to be a top athlete or scholar. They just need to be respectful, honest, and well-behaved. Across the country, there's a big push for high test scores. This DISD school remembers that these must go hand in hand with students learning how to work with others and be civil. Whether gifted or not, society benefits when people are humble and diplomatic. Thanks, Riley, for remembering this. That's my report.
Thank you, Trustee Mitchkay. Trustee Jones. Yes. Trustee Blackburn.
District 5 is still alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. You're on fire today, sir.
Wow, rhyming.
Trustee Bingham.
I don't have poetry like that. A couple of things. First off, I was so proud of Samuel Early College. On Tuesday, they did a presentation to the Southeast Chamber of Commerce. Their students gave some wonderful talks about how the early college has impacted their life. And it was really a great time for the community and a great program at our school. It is a college. The early college is a school within a school. And so the kids have really the best of both worlds. They not only get to participate in the advanced type education with Eastfield College, but they also get to participate in all of the regular activities that a comprehensive high school has. The other event happened earlier this week, and the entire Sigaville theater pattern, along with the Chamber of Commerce, had a wonderful Veterans Day program in which all of the theater schools participated, from the ROTC to the choirs, and they honored the veterans who had served our country. And so it was a very moving program. So thank you to the Sigaville Theater Cluster for that, and thank you to Samuel High School for their wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Trustee Bingham. Trustee Nuttall.
Good afternoon. I had the opportunity to participate in the City of Dallas Veterans Day Parade, and I would like to give kudos to Samuel Rosario. He was our first place winner in the Veterans Day Art Contest. He goes to San Jacinto Elementary. Also, congratulations to Skyline teacher, Miss Marjorie Robertson. Senator Royce West, we had a reception for her. She received $5,000, and the school received $500. For being the Texas 2014 Outstanding Teaching of Humanities Award. So congratulations to Margie Robinson. She had students, she's been teaching since 2004 and has students that graduated from college to come back and honor her. So that was wonderful. And kudos to the South Dallas community. We had a great time at the Lincoln and Madison High School football game. We have some Lincoln a student in the house that's a senior, and so to the South Dallas Super Bowl at the Cotton Bowl. So we had a lot of fun. I had to go 50% one side Madison, the other side Lincoln, and I wore red, so I wouldn't. So it was Lincoln won. Lincoln won. So congratulations. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Nuttall. Trustee Cowan.
District 7 is in heaven. Thank you very much.
That doesn't rhyme.
In heaven.
In heaven, okay. All right. Trustee Moran.
No, I do have one thing. The Sunset Bisonettes did get a last-minute opportunity to travel to Hawaii to participate in the Pearl Harbor Memorial Parade. However, they are still seeking funds so they can make that trip. So if you would like to donate and help a dream come true, contact the board office or contact me directly. Also want to thank the parents and teachers and community members who have come to my 2 community meetings about the state of DISD. I appreciate your input and your suggestions and your concerns, and I look forward to continue to work hard for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Cowan. Trustee Morath.
District 2 is in heaven too.
That works. That works. From District 8, it's picking up on, I think, Trustee Mitch Kay's comments about civility and the ability of this district to get it right. Foster Elementary has embarked over the past few years under the leadership of then Principal Chavez and now Principal Hall of trying to identify ways to empower its educators from a grassroots perspective to redefine the school that they are in. And they have been doing some phenomenal work, teachers partnering together, an art teacher and a science teacher, to teach science and then to teach art. Doing innovative things that we know our educators are extremely capable of and want to do. I'm proud of the work that Foster is doing in the schools in District 8 as well. I didn't get a chance to go today to, there was a showing of some of the classes, and I apologize for that, but I did want to make sure to shout that out. And then the other thing is I was invited, I think it was last week, and Trustee Murat can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but to Lee Elementary, where at about 8 in the morning, we walked on to the campus. There were a few city council members there. Trustee Marath was there. Superintendent Miles was there. And close to 200 community members on a very chilly day. Community members who some had children in the school system, particularly at Lee, but many who didn't. About 4,500 flyers were passed out the week before. People took the time from multiple neighborhood associations to knock on doors to spread the word about the great work that is happening at Lee Elementary. And people showed up because they wanted to know about the great work that Lee is doing. They wanted to understand more about the IB program. They wanted to understand about the direction that the principal there is setting for that school. And I truly believe we are reaching a tipping point when it comes to people believing and reinvesting in our school system. We have the middle class asking questions that they have not asked before, and we have parents and guardians of children who are in our schools now believing that it can indeed be done. I'm extremely proud of the work that community did to build that awareness. I'm thankful to the city council members that were able to attend and played an integral role in ensuring that those community members knew about Lee. And I'm thankful that Trustee Marath and Superintendent Miles was there as well to ensure that community understands the investment we are making in that school, but the larger investment that we're making in this school system. Believe in Dallas ISD. We will get this right. Trustees, we're now on the minutes submitted for approval. Oh, Trustee Jones.
All right. District 1 is the one. I'm extraordinarily proud of the excellence that we continue to see in District 1 schools, and first want to give kudos to a number of our schools. We have 3 right now that hit every distinction. These are comprehensive neighborhood schools that hit every distinction you can hit in the state standard of recognition. And I just think that is the goal we should aspire to all of our community schools throughout DISD, but I'm extraordinarily proud. I'd also like to give recognition to W.T. White. It is one of 10 schools in the nation to participate in the DECA pilot program. That helps promote STEM education. It also deals with our at-risk kids. It's a 70-year-old program and one of the most recognized in the United States for the work it does. I'd also like to give specific recognition. We talked tonight about IR schools. They don't have to stay that way, and certainly it takes a community to bring them out of IR. And I specifically want to call attention to Gooch Elementary School. You heard a little bit about them. But recently they received a national recognition that is top 25 in the United States. They've been acknowledged by the National Center for Urban Transformation. That is an incredible recognition and something we should all be proud of in their transformation towards excellence. I'd also like to talk about service. It's not just about excellence, but it's also about service. Our students from Cary this last week, Cary Middle School, participated in a Veterans Day event. It was the Daughters of the World War II, honoring thousands of veterans within our communities and honoring some of our great leaders who have fought for our freedom. They were there to present not only the colors, but to be part of the presentation of honoring the veterans. And I'm very proud of our Leadership Cadet Corps, not just at Cary, but across the entire district in supporting service for our children. I'm also proud of Kramer Elementary. You spoke of what's going on at Lee. Well, it took an entire community based on a town hall meeting we had last spring with the superintendent to recognize the future that they have in building on their excellence, in putting an international baccalaureate program into their mix of offerings to continue to strengthen that school for its community. Kramer is one of our jewels in DISD and continues to be, and I'm grateful that they're taking that next step to move to IB, and doing so driven by the parents and the community wanting more for the children. Tonight is their STEM night. I'm sorry we're not able to be there for that, but that's another opportunity for where they bring the communities into the school and celebrate excellence in learning. Tomorrow, Nathan Adams Elementary is going to do an Every Child Read parent workshop, and another example of our opening our doors and making sure we engage our parents. And on November 25th, Withers Elementary School will be participating in Read Across Dallas, another example of where our community gets to give back and bring much into our doors. I also want to thank TJ High School and the entire TJ community. They hosted a fair last Saturday, a community fair, to talk about being drug-free and to celebrate as kids the things that can fill their lives with positive direction, and to also remind everyone of the dangers and the tragedies that come from drug abuse. I'd also like to thank Real School Gardens. Trustee Mitchke had a brand new one in his district, but we're working on, and I was there to see that unveiling, but we're also working on one at Junkins Elementary, and I continue to thank their work on behalf of all of our schools throughout the district for what they do. I had a special experience, and I think it's something to really celebrate, and I want to call it out, and that's the Student Activities Department. Every weekend, they promote different opportunities for kids through academic events that support not only teaching and learning, but also support competitions for which our kids can show how good they are. Last Saturday, I had the opportunity to witness a robotics competition. It was the Dallas ISD FTC Invitational. Dallas ISD robotics is alive and well. It is an incredible opportunity for our kids, and the enthusiasm and the learning and the ingenuity and all of the skills that we want to see our kids do with problem solving were demonstrated right there. That same day, there was an academic decathlon and also debate tournaments. I highly encourage all of us to make sure that we support such important events that do support our children directly and help them in their learning journeys. Since this is Thanksgiving, I have a wish. Actually, it's two wishes, and I have a lot of thanks to give. The first is that we recognize our homeless students. Many of you know that Dallas ISD has a large percentage. The number varies anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 kids. Nationally, there was just a study released, and it's something I'd like to share with the board about the pervasiveness of homelessness in the United States and how it's impacting children in every part of not only our state, but pretty much every part of our nation. It is something that comes into our district in a very challenged way because it not only puts children at risk of not being able to sustain their learning, but it also means they have other issues beyond the classroom that they must contend with every single day. So I'd like, during this Thanksgiving period, for all of us to remember those that are truly without. And on a personal note, I want to give thanks to several Dallas ISD students, now alumni. Many of you know I've been battling breast cancer. I've been going through treatment. And I had an amazing experience through my medical treatment that really opened my eyes. A lot of the folks who I've received treatment from in the medical community are DISD alums. And when I ask them about that, they talk about their journey at Townview Health Magnet. They talk about their journey at W.T. White High School. They talk about their journey at Samuel and many other schools across our district. But I've been just amazed to see how these young people today are at the forefront of medical technology and medical service in our community with high-paying, very wonderful jobs. But more importantly, each one of them held my life in their hands, and to them, I'm all eternally grateful. Thank you.
Trustees, we are now on to the minutes submitted for approval. The following minutes are Audit Committee meeting, October 15th, 2014. Called board meeting, October 20th, 2014. Public hearing, October 22nd, 2014. Board meeting, October 22nd, 2014. Joint Board of Trustees and City Council Education Task Force meeting, October 30th, 2014. And called board meeting, November 6th, 2014. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's moved by Trustee Bingham. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, are there any corrections? All right, trustees, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 9-0.
You've just adopted the motion, thereby approving the minutes as submitted. This evening, we have consent agenda items 7A.1 through 7A.44 as amended. The following agenda items have been pulled for a separate vote. 7A2, 7A3, 7A4, 7A5, 7A6, 7A7, 7A10, 7A12, 7A13, 7A14, 7A30, 7A37, 7A42, and 7A43. Consent item 7A1 has been pulled completely from the agenda. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Bingham. Do I have a second? And seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 9-0.
You just adopted the motion, thereby approving the consent agenda as amended. We're now on to items pulled for a separate vote. And I do believe we have attorneys present to speak on item number 8. Consider and take possible action to review and accept the fiscal year 2014 external auditor's report prepared by Deloitte & Touche LLP. Trustees, if there are no objections, I'd like to move that to the front of the conversation because we do have the attorneys there to be able to answer questions.
No objections, except that they are not attorneys.
They're not attorneys. Okay. Advisors. Auditors. There we go. Learn something new every day. CPAs.
Bean County.
We're going to move to item 8. Mr. Terry.
Let me introduce you the partner with Deloitte & Touche that was in charge of the audit, and he'll introduce his staff, and that's Terry Kyle. Come up.
Good evening. It's good to be with you this evening. With me tonight are Nick Scott and Kelly Chamberlain, our audit managers on the audit this year. Oh, it's all right. Okay, so we met earlier this afternoon with the audit committee to go over in detail the results of our audit. Our audit is for fiscal year 2014. The results of that audit are that we have a clean opinion, unmodified clean opinion on the financial statements that will appear at the beginning of the financial statements, the beginning of the financial section of the financials. That means we do believe the financials are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. A part of that audit is also a single audit because you receive a number of grant funds, you're required to undergo what's called a single audit in which we audit the compliance and controls of the grant funds at the same time we do the financial audit. Those reports appear at the back of the financial statements, and those reports indicate that also a clean opinion there, no modifications on any of the grant funds. We have 3 findings there related to some of the grant funds that we look at. And those recommendations related to those are listed there as well. In addition to those reports, we also issue a governance letter, which is our communication from the auditors to you, the board, that tells you how the audit went. And it tells you that the audit went well, that we received full cooperation from management, that we had no adjustments that we agreed to pass upon, no material adjustments we were required to book, We received full cooperation from management, no disagreements, were able to complete the audit in accordance with generally accepted audit standards and government audit standards as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about any of those reports or the audit in general.
Before we go that route, I just want to make sure that we are, from a parliamentary standpoint, actually discussing the motion. So we're going to have a motion in a second on that.
Absolutely.
But
So
before
move- Or move to
approve.
approve the audit.
Okay, moved by Trustee Jones. But before I get to that second, just want to make sure that we know, particularly on the agenda where we are. I've got item 7A12. Just want to make sure that all trustees are aware. We're talking about 7A12. 8A. But you're exactly right. Item 7A12 that we're voting on. We've got a motion moved by Trustee Jones. Do I have a second?
Second.
And seconded by Trustee Bingham. Trustees, do we have any questions? We'll start with Trustee Jones.
Well, no, it's good.
Okay.
No. I'll catch up.
Okay. Any other questions? Trustee Blackburn.
We've already had a practice run.
We have.
We have. So, when did your organization send your final draft of the report to the administration?
Tuesday afternoon.
Tuesday afternoon,
Correct.
2 days before tonight. And the administration sent it to the board last night, less than 24 hours before this meeting. What is best practice? What is normal amount of time that the board should receive the report before we're asked to vote on it?
There's no normal. Every organization is different. Some organizations prefer that we bring the drafts to the meeting. Some organizations prefer that they receive the drafts in advance. It's really your own preference.
Okay, so you guys finished the report on Tuesday. Was there a problem getting it done 2 weeks earlier?
There were a number of things. That is very true. I wouldn't say a problem, but there were a number of things over the last couple of weeks that we continue to work on to be able to finalize those findings. We needed to verify the truthfulness of what we were writing in the findings. We needed to obtain additional information about, one of the things that is at the end is the litigation, because that gets updated very frequently. We have to wait till very close to the end to update the litigation, which we did on Monday with your attorneys. And there were a number of things in the financial statements that we really needed to track down to identify if they were appropriate or not, that would require adjustment or not. And so there were some things certainly that we continue to work on over the last couple of weeks.
Okay. Assuming that you're going to do the same report or same audit next year, what would it take for your organization to have the final draft to the administration so that the board can get it at least 2 weeks before we are asked to vote on it?
Well, that would require us to plan on that in advance, work with management, so we set back all the timetables 2 weeks so that we receive drafts of the trial balances. We receive the supporting documentation 2 weeks or more earlier than what we received this year.
Can you guys start working on a plan?
We absolutely can.
Because I think while it's important that the board vote on this, and I understand we have a need to get it into TEA within a certain period, which is going to be sometime next week or maybe even the week after. But I think it is not good practice for the administration to get something so important to us the night before. And to Superintendent Miles, I'm going to say, next year, we need to have this report 2 weeks in advance so that we have time to look at the more than 150 or so pages, as we should get all of our information in advance so that we're not rushing to make a decision. But I thank you, Deloitte, and I thank your staff.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Trustee Mitchke.
Yes, a couple of comments. First, I'd like you to go ahead and read the exact language of the opinion.
I will do so. And to be clear, the opinion is prescribed to us by the AICPA, the American Institute of CPAs, is 3 pages long, but you're talking about the opinion paragraph itself.
Yeah.
Yes. So the opinion paragraph itself and these opinions are new formatting actually, and recently revised by the AICPA. It states, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the Dallas Independent School District as of June 30, 2014, and the respective changes in financial position, and where applicable, cash flows thereof for the year then ended, in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America.
Okay, and that is referred to as a clean opinion or an unqualified opinion?
Correct.
Okay. As to the timing, I do generally agree with Dr. Blackburn that getting things in advance of a couple of days before a meeting is very, very helpful. With respect to an audit opinion that is clean, I have less concern with it. If you had indicated that there were 10 material deficiencies or even one material deficiency, I think I would have wanted more time to look at it. I spoke with our public member advisor, Mr. Montgomery, right after the meeting, and he indicated to me, he brought it up, he thought 2 weeks was actually a little bit too much in advance because of the way things change and the opinion has to be accurate as of a certain date. So I would like to see it, see the opinion next year in advance. 2 days is not enough. 2 weeks may be too much time in advance, given the changes that can take place in the opinion. So I would just ask that you work with Dr. Terry and Mr. Singleton on a schedule that gives us the opinion a little bit ahead of time. But thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Trustee Midgecane. Trustee Morath, and then Trustee Nuttall.
There were no material weaknesses in the opinion this year.
Correct.
Outside of the single audit, there were no serious deficiencies or significant deficiencies.
Correct.
And in fact, were there any deficiencies, or they just don't get listed?
No deficiencies this year. Last year in the financial...
Last year there was a deficiency.
There were a couple of deficiencies in the financial... We write findings related to the financial statements and findings related to the single audit.
Right.
And in the financial statement audit last year, we had a couple of small deficiencies. Those items were corrected this year. We did not note them again this year, so no need to repeat them, and nothing new to be reported there.
So this is, in all likelihood, the best audit that we've had in probably about 20 years.
I can't speak to 20 years,
but... I know your information doesn't go back that far.
Yes.
Okay. And the single audits, there were no material weaknesses. There were a couple of significant deficiencies?
Correct. In the single audit...
And in fact, one of those significant deficiencies was essentially a repeat of last year. Not only just a repeat of last year, it was last year's
related to the same finding.
Yeah.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Well, I think that's really good news for us, and I want to congratulate the financial team and really the district as a whole. That's remarkable, and we've come a long way, baby. With regard to the timing issue, I know that we received certain documentation a day earlier, and then we received the whole annual financial report yesterday. What I would just suggest is maybe a possible course of action is I think there are chunks of this thing that are settled several weeks in advance, and then there are chunks that are fluid. If the stuff that is settled several weeks in advance can be communicated to us at the briefing, either leaving the other sections blank or making note that these sections are definitely going to change or likely to change, that may give us enough information to review the bulk of the material over that 2-week period while you're still finalizing information. So that's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Trustee Nuttall.
Hi. Could you refresh the memory of which one is a new finding?
Yes, ma'am. So in the single audit...
The single audit.
We have 3 findings this year, 2 of which relate to issues that have occurred in the past, and the third one is a new item. The first item, labeled 2014-001, is a new item, relates to time and effort forms. I'm sorry?
no.
Okay, and then the other two items, number 2 and number 3. Number 2 relates to procurement, number 3 relates to the SES tutoring program. Both of those were findings in a previous year, and both of those have the same issues related to expenditures in the current year, the same types of issues that we noted in the
But the new item
prior
is the
year.
Title I, the time and effort form.
Correct.
And so in this, on page 125, you speak upon identification of the issue, the amount of this person's salary was refunded to the grantor.
Yes, correct. This, in fact, came up with internal audit in one of their reports is what they were looking at this area prior to our audit work. And so, in fact, I believe by the time we had looked at it, the money had already been refunded to the grantor.
And who's the grantor?
In this case, it would be TEA.
TEA,
Yes,
so how
correct.
much did we refund?
26,000? 26,000. they're telling me.
26,000 back to
Correct.
TEA.
Right, I believe this is an individual that all of their time was charged to the grant, and it shouldn't have been charged, because that's, on these time and effort forms, they are
Title.
required to document what they do. Right,
Yeah,
right.
you have to use it for.
Correct.
And then on page 126, you talk, the internal audit said was erroneous charge to the grant. What is that? That was
I'm sorry, say that again?
one other employee identified by internal audit was erroneously charged to the grant.
Correct.
The draft, well, we have the draft mode.
Correct.
So-
So again, all the money that's needed to be refunded back to TEA has been refunded back to TEA. And these time and effort forms document the time that each person spends on the grant, and they need supervisory reviews. In some situations, the time and effort form was not appropriately filled out, not appropriately reviewed by a supervisor. So our recommendation there is, and it kind of stems back to not full understanding of what the importance of these forms. And so our recommendation relates to periodic re-education of everyone to remind everybody the importance of what these forms are and what they do.
What is the total that we refunded back to TEA, Mr. Cherry? Is it just at 26?
I
This
think
is
it's the
not a
26,
separate?
yes,
Just the 26. So we are correcting that policy and procedures are not consistently followed and adhered to ensure that all federally funded employees are charged. So we're correcting that, Mr. Terry?
Correct, we are.
To make sure, because we get a lot of Title I. I requested the Title I district summary of the total district summary, that one page we used to receive. We can put it in Friday's package.
Will do.
Also, we received this at actually 8:39 PM last night, so I ditto Dr. Blackburn to get it a little earlier. The auditors did.
I apologize.
At the meeting, said 2 weeks were too far in advance, but it would be nice to get it at least 48 hours to kind of review. It was 200 pages, 101 was 130-some pages, I think. Okay,
Thank you, Trustee Nettle. Trustee Jones?
Thank you. First, I'd like to give my incredible appreciation to the entire financial service team working closely with Deloitte. I think you all deserve great praise for the fine work you do in making sure we do have a clean audit. But I disagree with Trustee Morath in that each audit, it stands on its own. It's not as though you can have one good year and one bad year and call it great if you have a trend of 3 good years. Every year has to stand on its own, and every year has to be judged on its own merits. So, but this year was particularly a fine year. Congratulations, Dr. Terry and your team. To the auditors, just so people are clear, this is a financial audit.
Correct.
Which means you don't look at operational risk management, you don't look at other areas of an organization that should be looked at to assess whether it's working at the level or the effectiveness of what needs to be there, both financially and operationally.
Correct.
Okay, so we're just talking the financials.
Correct.
Yeah. And with respect to controls, can you speak for a minute about how that is looked at in the financial space versus other spaces?
Financials versus the single audit?
Correct.
Okay. We're required by audit standards to consider controls as we perform our audit. And so we look at the controls, look at the history of controls of the district, look at the history of controls at other districts as well, and our experience with other entities. And based on that, then we design our audit tests. We can assume at the beginning controls will be great, limit our testing, but based on our experience with this district, and actually, frankly, with all my governmental clients, we don't do that. We take a more conservative approach, and that means we test more items than not. And so we say we're not going to rely on controls. We're going to look at them as we go through. We're going to do we have to look at, they call it design and implementation of those controls. We have to identify how the controls are designed, how they're implemented, and identify whether there's any weaknesses there. But at the same time, the assumption we make up front is that we would rather be more conservative, do more detailed testing to get a better flavor as opposed to cutting back our testing.
Based on that, what was your general opinion about the state of our controls?
I think they're in good shape. And in fact, as was noted, we don't have any financial statement controls to talk about. Now, as within the AICPA audit, I should warn that our audit is not designed to test the controls. We look at the controls in relation to testing the financial statements, the target of the financial statements, not the controls themselves. We're not in a SEC PCAOB environment where in that environment you have to audit the controls specifically, and that's not the environment we're in. However, at the same time, we didn't have any recommendations to make related to controls.
Just wanted to make sure there's clarity, but thank
Yes.
you. Again, I just really want to take my hat off on the financial side. This district has come a long way in moving towards a much more rigorous and control-oriented system that once upon a time wasn't always there. So we have come a long way, baby, but I don't want people to get a false sense of security. Every year is its own, and this year was a very good year, so congratulations to all of our financial team for continuing to do good things for this district. And thank you, Deloitte, for your fine work.
Thank you, Trustee Jones. Trustees, any other questions? Just a couple quick questions.
Yes, sir.
From me. You know the history of Dallas IC, the history of Dallas IC's finances. We don't have to rehash it here. That's not your job. Your job's to talk about this year. But I think the community deserves to know just a little bit more about the extremely productive and great work that our financial team has been doing. This will make a blog post or something like that, maybe the Metro section, hopefully. But if you were going to write a story about Dallas ISD and its financial state right now, as an outside person, what would you tell the lay people, community members who have had to read story after story about the state of Dallas IC's finances? What would you tell them?
That's a difficult question because an auditor always is always pessimistic. I'm always looking ways to criticize and not praise.
Great.
That's what you hire us to do.
Absolutely.
And let me speak to that actually, because the district has made significant improvements. You're right. When we came on board 8 years ago, we had a number of material weaknesses, a number of significant deficiencies. In the financial audit and the single audit, both of those. Those have declined over the years. The district continues to work on those areas. And as we were detecting that in this year's audit, we challenged ourselves. We looked at each other and said, what is it? Is it us or is it the district? And we challenged ourselves and we redoubled our efforts. We greatly intensified what we were doing because we didn't want it to be us. We didn't want to be doing less of an audit than in the past. And I don't think your staff would believe that we did that at all. They would say they were very audited very, very much.
Brutal.
But that speaks to the fact that I think the district has made improvements and continues to make improvements. Now, you said it very well. I caveat that by saying it's 1 year. You can step backwards very easily, and particularly in the single audit. The single audit has such a low threshold of findings. Mm-hmm. I know that you guys like to look at the fact that you've gone from 7 findings to 3. You may go back to 7 or 9 or 10 next year. It's a very difficult area. The grant compliance area is very, very difficult, and the reporting threshold is very low. So the goal should be to have no findings, but I'm not going to, and I know I know Dr. Terry, that is his goal, and I remind him all the time, don't assume you're going to get to that point, because it may or may not happen. But that's his goal, and that's what they try to do. But those findings certainly are a reflection. The number of findings certainly is a reflection, and future audits will tell the tale how that stays.
I appreciate that. Dr. Terry, to you and your team, thank you for a great year. We expect even better next year. Thank you very much. Trustees, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 9-0.
You've just adopted the motion, thereby approving to review and accept the fiscal year 2014 External Auditor's Report prepared by Deloitte & Touche LLP. Let's see. All right, trustees, we're going to go back then to item number 7A2. To approve the amendment to Board Policy CH Local, Purchasing and Acquisition. It's a second read sponsored by Jim Terry, Chief Financial Officer. Consent item number 2, pulled by Trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nunnall. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Bingham. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, is there any discussion? Trustee Foreman.
Thank you, Trustee Solis. Dr. Terry, as you know, I have some real issues with this particular policy change. And I'll just note what my concerns are, because we've had a conversation about this. My concerns begin on page
10?
Well, yeah. Well, actually, it starts on page 7. Under board approval, when it talks about the procurement service department shall provide a list of approved contracts valued at $50,000 to $149,000, which those contracts will not come before the board. And then on page 8, under waiver of board approval and policies, it talks about in an emergency that the staff does not have to come to the board for purchases of $150,000. Then on page 11, which is where I have some real concerns, where you're actually changing the language so that purchases that are made, and this is the statement that comes directly from the policy year change, under unauthorized transactions, failure to follow established administrative procedures shall not require board ratification. Failure to follow established administrative procedures shall not require for the board to ratify or the board to know what's going on. And on your answer to me is that no ratification is required if a board has approved a vendor for $150,000 to $250,000. It says $150 or $250, and I'm not sure.
That depends on whether it's a non-construction or it's a general fund, so that's the difference.
Okay,
General fund is $150.
So the board has approved that for $250,000 that the staff doesn't have to come to the board?
Correct. On construction projects. Most of that's going to be bond.
Okay. And I'll say this and then let someone else speak. This board continues to give away its responsibilities. We certainly have experienced in the most recent days expenditures of funds without the board knowing what's going on. And I think that this board needs to do what you got elected for. And that is for you to take the responsibilities of knowing what is going on in this district. Because if these are not in the aggregate, it can go on and on and on, and I just have a problem with that.
I need to correct him. I misspoke. That's $250,000 for cooperative contracts, not construction.
Thank you, Trustee Foreman. Trustees, any other questions? Trustee Nettle?
Be supporting this policy.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I move to table this policy.
A second.
Okay. Move to postpone, or you want to table, well, you can't table the conversation, because tabling the conversation just means that we're going to table it until the rest of this meeting. So you want to postpone indefinitely, if that's what you're trying to do, or postpone to a specific date?
To postpone it to the next board meeting.
Okay, the amendment is to then postpone to the next board meeting, making sure that you're getting that. And it has been seconded. Is there any discussion on postponing? Okay. Would you like to give us a reason why, Trustee Foreman?
I think the part of it is that I think the board has to have more discussion with the staff in regards to giving away this authority and the board really not knowing what's going on with these expenditures. Because they can add up to be millions of dollars before you know it.
All right, thank you, Trustee Foreman. Trustee Jones?
Jim, what controls or what related checks and balances are in this area, especially around quality and other assurance?
Well, certainly around quality of the product or services,
Right.
well, that's...
Point of order.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to being germane to this particular motion, the particular motion is
To
just to simply postpone.
Well, I guess I'm trying to understand what other areas we hadn't quite covered, but I may be out of order, I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Jones. Trustees, any other questions on the particular movement to postpone, the motion to postpone? Trustee Blackburn?
Dr. Terry, if we postpone, or Kimmy, what adverse reaction might we have by postponing this for another month?
We don't see any.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Trustees, just to make sure that we're clear, in order to postpone, it'll take 5 votes in the positive. 5 votes in the positive. No other questions on this particular motion to postpone until the next board meeting? All those in favor of postponing this item until the next board meeting, please raise your hands. And all those opposed? Okay, hold on one second. All those in favor, would you please raise your hands and keep your hands raised until they can move?
You can vote. They can vote on the
You can vote on the machine, great. All those well, we don't have to go. If you'll vote on the screen. All those in favor of the motion to postpone, press yea. All those opposed to the motion to postpone, press nay. Or if you're abstaining, abstain.
Motion passes, 5 voting yes, 4 voting no.
Okay. The motion has been postponed until the next board meeting. Trustees, we are now on to item 7A3, to approve the amendment to Board Policy DBA Local, Employment Requirements and Restrictions, Credentials, and Records, no financial impact. It's a second read, sponsored by Carmen Darville, Chief Human Capital Management. And consent item number 3, pulled by Trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion? It's moved by Trustee Bingham. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing no discussion, trustees, all those in, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 9-0.
You've just adopted the motion, thereby approving the amendment to Board Policy DBA Local, Employment Requirements and Restrictions, Credentials, and Records. We're now on to item 7A4, to approve the amendment to Board Policy DEA Local, Compensation and Benefits, Wage and Hour Laws, no financial impact. Second read, sponsored by Carmen Darville, the Chief of Human Capital Management. Consent item number 4, pulled by Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Bingham. Do I have a second? Seconded by Trustee Jones. Trustees, is there any discussion? Trustee Foreman.
Hi, Carmen.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
One of the things I asked for at the board briefing was to look at best practices and to supply me with some other districts that are doing this or other companies that are doing this, and I didn't receive that.
In the trustee tracker, I uploaded information about compensation comparison. That's how it was listed in terms of how salary is impacted at outside organizations who allow alternative work arrangements. And the research there is that the compensation is really only impacted by cost of living adjustments when the employee who's working out of area, as in another city and another location, has some sort of alternative work arrangement. For example, if you have an employee who is working for an Ohio school district and living in New York City, then there would be some sort of compensation impact due to the cost. But in terms of other school districts, I didn't find many other school districts, at least locally, that have this in place.
Okay, and I also asked for corporations to get a better understanding of, because that's one of the things we talked about at the briefing was that the corporations were doing that. So did you find local corporations that?
I did find corporations that had that. We had some of them we mentioned at the briefing, but in terms of follow-up, also Bank of America, I may have mentioned that at the briefing, but there were several. U.S. Department of Transportation, there are several companies who do this.
But you couldn't find any school districts?
The school districts are not in the area.
Were there school districts, period?
Yes, I did find a school district, but it was one I was not familiar with.
A school district?
Yes.
Okay, so that means one school district?
Correct.
Okay.
There may be others.
Okay. I have a hard time, and thank you for responding. I have a hard time for us being on the cutting edge of everything in regards to what happens with our employees. And I think one of the questions that I asked was about the compensation, and you responded that they would make the same thing as a person coming to work.
Correct.
And that troubles me because I just don't believe that's common practice. So I'll be voting against this.
Trustee Nuttall.
Which school district?
I don't have it in front of me, Trustee Nuttall. I'm going to have to look up the name.
Could you just send up, I'm curious to see which school district?
Sure.
That, you said it was one school district in the United States.
There may be more than one. I was just researching to see if there were any school districts, but I'll look it up.
And can you refresh my memory of why not contract versus employee? You know, that we need a graphic designer, we just contract with them versus the employee taking on the cost of benefits and all that extra cost. Why not just contract?
Sure. To pick up where we left off in our previous conversation, we found that some of the costs of contracting with employees, it tends to be more expensive than actually employing them as an employee of the school district.
For example, what's the average cost of a graphics designer? Did we research that to look to see if that is actually true by the best practices or research on that?
That it would be cheaper to contract out than to employ them with the district?
Yes, because you gave the example of graphic designers. And so that's a short term, maybe needing them for that specific skill set. So just contract them for 6 months, or contract as needed when we have a major project or project base, contract as a project base. Because we use a lot of contractors now. So I was just trying to, and we pay a lot for contract services. So did we do a cost comparison of how that looked in the cost arena?
Yes, I don't have a full analysis in front of me, but in terms of even my professional experience, when I've had to pay a contract out for, say, recruitment marketing or things like that, it is much more expensive than an employee on payroll who's receiving a salary and benefits.
Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Noto. Dr. Blackburn?
Just have a few questions. How many employees do we have already under this type of agreement?
We have 2.
We have 2. And those 2 have a written agreement as far as their work from home?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. What type of work do they do?
One does work in communications and one does work related to E-rate.
Communication and E-rate. How many employees do we have doing some type of work with E-rate?
I would not know off the top of my head.
And how many do we have that are doing the same type of work in communication as the employee that we have that's working from home?
I would have to defer to communications. I'm not clear on all the details of the job role. I know in communications there are people in similar type of work, but a lot of them specialize. I would have to defer to the department.
Then are we going to allow other people in communication and other people that are working with E-rate to work from home?
In accordance with how we've outlined the policy, that would be a conversation between the employee and their manager that would go through the appropriate approval process. I can't speak to it in general.
So beyond communication and beyond the E-rate, there are other departments and other employees that may request to work from home.
It is possible, yes.
It's possible. And remind me in this policy that's written right now, how does an employee initiate the conversation about working from home versus at 3700 Ross Avenue or any other place?
Sure. So the way we have it outlined is that there is a form that's in draft, obviously based on what happens this evening, but there is a drafted form that the employee can fill out that goes to their supervisor and will eventually, once it goes through the system, will come up to the cabinet level for review to gain approval.
So there would be at least 2 levels of approval?
Yes.
Okay. You said a supervisor and then the cabinet, or?
Yes, so it would go through the respective supervisors. It depends where they work in the organization. But eventually it will come up to the cabinet level.
Okay. You know, part of my concern is when we have people working from home and we're not knowing that they do their work. Now, I've seen the evaluations for the 2 people that are working from home, and it's very similar to the other evaluations in that the employee rated themselves slightly lower than their supervisor. So our current evaluation system is I'll talk to you more about those 2 evaluations that I have some concerns about.
Okay.
But let's go back to the policy and how other employees will be able to take advantage of this opportunity to work from home. What types of criteria might be considered? Because it's not in the policy, but I'm going to assume that it's going to be in the regulations, and I'm going to request right now that we get the regulations.
Yes, and I will email it to you directly. It's also available online.
Okay.
The guidelines that we have listed in the regulation, that the employee must sign the acceptable use policy agreement, must agree that the use of district-provided equipment, software, data, and supplies is for district-related purposes only. An employee who elects to use his or her personal equipment is responsible for any loss, damage, or wear to his or her personal equipment. The immediate supervisor and employee must agree in advance on a specific work arrangement, including work days and hours. It goes into further detail there. The employee is expected to be accessible as business requires. Employee must be on site at his or her department and as necessary to attend meetings, training sessions, or similar events. Must maintain a standard workload. If they are unable to work because of illness or other circumstance, they must use a personal day, and that has to be reported to supervisor, of course, in accordance with the government's attendance procedures. If they are unavailable, they also have to use a personal day if they're taking a day for personal responsibilities. Any work-related accident or injury which occurs while telecommuting must be reported to risk management, as any employee would do on site. And failure to fulfill normal work requirements may be cause for disciplinary action. So that's how we have the regulation currently drafted.
Okay. You mentioned illness and not able to work.
Correct.
If they're not reported into an office, how would you know that they're ill or not working?
Sure. So currently, as you may be aware, I have employees who work in HCM but work in 4 or 5 different buildings. If an employee is ill, I have to count on them to notify me. It would be the same in this situation if, for example, we know it's flu season and you are regurgitating and you are unable to perform your job function on that particular day, you would report it, and obviously you're unlikely to be online, etc., fulfilling your job responsibilities, and so you would take that as a personal day.
So how would the person working from home clock in?
They would not clock in.
So how would you know that they're not working?
You would be able to tell by work product delivery and accessibility.
If they did no work today, how would you know it?
The same way I know right now with employees who are on different work sites, if they have deliverables with deadlines that are not met, I follow up with them and find out what took place.
But you see that it's quite easy to not work and not take days off. You might still get your work done, your product done, but you're probably not at work, probably not working, and might be taking time off, but it's not counted towards you. So in some ways, this might be advantageous to an employee to work from home, because if you want to take off, it won't count against you. If you just want to go to the zoo with your child for the day, it won't count against you unless somebody's watching you to see who's working from home and what they do throughout the day. And I mention that because we've had a few instances in the past where people have followed our employees to find out if they're working, if our dollars are at rest. And I mention that because I would hate for those 2 employees or any other employee to be followed to see if they're doing any work or not doing DISD work when they should be. But let me go back to, so they won't clock in like other employees are required to and like policy requires. So they won't be clocking in, and if they're ill, you really won't know it unless they call and tell you that they're ill and not working that day.
Well,
For instance, the 2 employees we have right now, if they're not feeling well and they don't do the work that day, how do we know it? How have we known it?
I would have to speak to their specific manager. Since I don't manage them directly, I can't speak to their specific circumstance. For me,
So you can find out how many absences that they've had since they've started working from home?
Sure.
Could you give me that information?
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Now, assuming that they're working from home and they're doing work for the Dallas ISD, what if they trip over the teddy bear and they injure themselves? Who's responsible? Dallas ISD or their homeowners?
It would have to be reported to workers' comp, and then they would make the determination.
So if we're going to report to workers' comp, that means that in some way Dallas ISD may be liable.
It's possible.
Have we looked into that? Have we checked with legal or someone to find out where's the liability?
We checked with Ms. McNeil in workers' comp.
And she said that we may be liable?
Yes, that we could be liable, just like if they were here in the workplace and they were to fall over a cord, then we would be liable. So they would have to examine it just like they would any other workers' comp.
And whereas here we can repair or fix a rug or whatever, at home, do we have to go and repair anything that might have caused them to injure themselves?
I wouldn't be able to speak to the details of workers' comp, but I know that they have their guidelines.
You guys understand my apprehension, don't you?
Yes.
The liability, you don't understand the liability issue? If someone, yeah, so just say yes. See, so the potential for liability is there. The potential for someone to not report an absence, the potential for someone to not do the work. And I'm going to remind you that these employees are paid with tax dollars. They're paid with tax dollars, which means that people will try to find out what they're doing on our tax dollars. Just want you to be prepared for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Trustee Jones?
I'm generally in favor of anything that increases flexibility in a workforce and certainly can balance interests and needs of both parties. I'm somewhat challenged to want to move forward with this at this time for two reasons. Number one, there really are a lot of control issues that are embedded in changing this policy, and I don't believe that at this time they've been fully vetted and understood. Dr. Blackburn just spent a fairly considerable time, outlining some of the simpler things, but it's more complex than that. In talking to other districts who have looked at this, and in this case, I believe this policy just specifically is based on those that are non-contract, as you say, and central administration and so on. I mean, it's a certain group of folks. There's still the issues that come into play that really do need to be understood in advance of moving forward with a change of this order of magnitude in your workforce structure. There's other considerations too which have not been discussed around compensation and how that gets calculated relative to other and the way benefits and things would work for those that are under a different arrangement. There's also the questions of how you really capture hours and how you verify. And that one, when you're dealing in the public sector, is no small issue because of the nature of the dollars and the compliance that we're under by a number of outside agencies that expect us to be able to show that those dollars are spent wisely and are effectively being controlled. The more important question comes back to what's the real cost. In looking at certain areas, if you do a fully loaded cost of somebody who's a full-time employee, even if they're under a flexible structure, and you look at some of the job categories that we've talked about, in most cases, if you did the analysis, it's actually cheaper to contract because you don't have the fully loaded cost, because you basically just pay for the deliverable, and you're not paying beyond that. You don't have to keep somebody on the clock, keep them working, have work for them, and unless that's a steady flow and it can be justified over an annualized basis, typically the economics are to contract, not to hire, for the types of things we talked about during the briefing. Outsiders who do graphic design, things that are non-core to your mission. I'm particularly concerned because the language here is so vague. It basically opens it up to anybody in the central office, and then it's just discretion on the part of the various managers and HR functions, and we don't know what that is, and that's been part of the challenge, is saying which job classifications would this apply to and why. And that's where most other districts have said, they can't reconcile it because you'd start with your Chapter 21, and of course you can't do it there, so the rest of your workforce is more support. And then you want to look at economics on support. So I just think this is premature. I mean, I'm very much in support of wanting to do as much flexibility in our structure, but I think this one really needs a lot more study and a lot more understanding of a number of factors: liability, controls, economics, and which part of our workforce it would apply to and why, and how it would be structured, and also how it would be evaluated, because it does change the dynamic on how that would work as well. So those are just some of my concerns. You've heard them before. Didn't see much to address some of those key areas, although I appreciate this type of thinking. I'm not ready at this time to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Jones. Trustees, any other questions? Okay, Trustee Morath and then Trustee Cowan.
I thought I heard Dr. Blackburn state that policy requires employees the time to clock in and clock out. I was unaware of that. Is that a policy? Can you refer me to the policy that does that?
I'm gonna have to look. I don't know it off the top of my head
Yeah.
where bio clock lives.
Yeah, I don't think that actually is policy. I think that's been administrative practice for a number of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Morath. Trustee Cowan?
Yeah, I've heard the concerns and I understand some of the concerns and the fear of opening, what could be Pandora's box here, but I don't want to go to that extreme. I think the board, if we shoot this down, is missing an opportunity to signal the administration that we want to help you, attract and retain highly qualified people and give qualified and productive professionals flexibility in how they work. So I'll be supporting this, and I hope you join me in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cowan. Trustees, any other comments?
May I just add, one of the districts is Albuquerque. I just wanted to circle back on that.
Great. So I have maybe a quick question on the clock in, clock out procedure. So you can't do it right now, but why can't we do it in the future? Is there a way to set up a system within the current system that we have of clocking in and clocking out to allow that to actually happen?
I would argue now I'd have to confer with Gray, but I would argue that once you log in a VPN, you can track if a user is online and how they're engaging with the system. So while you're not rolling your thumbprint on a machine, you're essentially getting the same result to see if somebody's in the workspace.
And potentially employees may not be using a computer though, and still be doing work. So, I think, are there other ways to be able to track outside of a VPN?
Sure. You wouldn't engage with a computer at all. You could use a smartphone as well. There are other avenues that you could use.
Mm-hmm. So, the way I see this is, you've established checks within the system to be able to then say, I'm gonna have to have multiple conversations with the individual that's trying to do this. And with that, I'm going to be able to gain a better understanding of what they are going to be doing, how they're going to be reporting to me, and I know that you are this type of employee. So it's, as a supervisor, it's incumbent upon me to make sure that I am checking in with you on a consistent basis to know whether or not you are actually doing the work that you said you were going to do, which led me to then approve this for you. I agree with Trustee Cowan. I think we would be missing an opportunity as a district. This seems to be another way to potentially attract high-quality talent to this district to add value to the work that we're doing for our students. I'll be supporting this. And trustees, if there are no other comments, please cast your votes.
Motion passes, 6 voting yes, 2 voting no, and 1 recusing or abstaining.
And the clock in is in DK.
It is? Thank you. Sorry. You've just adopted the motion, thereby approving the amendment to Board Policy DEA Local Compensation and Benefits Wage and Hour Laws, no financial impact. Our next item is 7A5, to approve the amendment to Board Policy DEC Local Compensation and Benefits Leaves and Absences, no financial impact. Second read, sponsored by Carmen Darville, Chief of Human Capital Management. Consent item number 5, pulled by Trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Bingham. Do I have a second? Second. Seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, is there any discussion? Okay, Trustee Foreman?
Yes. Your microphone isn't on. No.
Okay.
I thought I had it now. How many local days are you proposing in this policy?
As the policy reads right now, it is 5. That was with input from trustees. Administration had also discussed 4 instead. So the total would be 4. It's currently 3, so an addition of 1. The input from the board was 2 more.
Okay. I missed something.
Sure.
So is it 4 or 5 as the policy reads now?
It's 5.
Okay. So staff said 4. It's currently at 3.
Correct.
Staff wanted 4, but with input from the board, it's 5.
Right. We changed it to 5.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Foreman. Trustee Nuttall. And Trustee Mitchke.
7 of 26.
Yes.
Dock days are indication that the employee has used all available days, and the employee may be subject to a deduction in pay. So is this, where do we address if you're on maternity leave, short-term leave, and you have to have dock days? Where is that addressed? Because it says the employee may be subject to disciplinary action up and including termination of employment. But I didn't see where it addresses maternity leave and all of the special circumstances.
Sure. So on page 5 of 26, what page were you on, Trustee
I'm
Nuttall?
on 7 of 26.
Okay. On page 5 of 26, it outlines different types of medical-related leaves. And embedded in here, it also considers if an employee and approved leaves starts on page 6 of 26. If an employee is on an approved leave, if you are out of days, of course, your finances can still be impacted. So for example, when I was on maternity leave, if I didn't have enough days to support it, yes, my compensation could still be impacted. It wasn't a penalty based on policy or anything like that. It's you have to have the days to support the number of days you're out.
But if you're on maternity leave and you don't have the days that support it, they start docking your days.
Correct.
So here on 7 of 26, it says dock days are, I don't see where it address special circumstances. You know, subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. So if I'm having a baby or I have cancer or whatever the case may be that is something serious, I mean, that's kind of stressful for an employee because I don't see where, I'm just looking in the policy where you address, because then I see address those special circumstances.
Sure, so they are addressed in the leaves, but dock days are not punitive in the sense that it's essentially giving you a definition. If you have X number of days in your balance and you exceed that number, it is a dock day. You are now docking because you don't have the day available.
So all the other leaves should be approved leaves? Because it says if the absences are not approved, the employee may be subject to disciplinary action, and it's punitive.
Correct. So if you're not on an approved leave and you are out of days and you're still not showing up to work so that your days are being docked, you could be subject to disciplinary action.
If you're not showing up. But if you have maternity leave and you don't have the days, you're still docked those days.
Correct, but that's,
Okay.
that's not punitive. You just have to have days in order to be able to take them.
Take maternity leave, you have to have days?
No.
Okay, you say you have to have days in order to take them, but I'm looking
you
at...
have to have days in your bank in order to be able to take those days. If you don't have any days remaining in your bank, you will be docked.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if it's, maternity leave, if, family illness, if a principal want to prove that my mother is ill and I need to take care of her and take 5 extra dock days because I'm a new employee, I only get 8 days, and I need 3 extra more days, and the principal said I can't approve that, do I fall in that category of possible termination?
So in an extenuating circumstance like the one you outlined, such as a family member's illness, if you have exhausted all days, one of the things that we listed in the attendance handbook that we have drafted is that you would be able to be considered to receive additional days for extenuating circumstances.
And that includes maternity leave and all that other stuff?
It can be reviewed.
Maternity leave will be reviewed?
It can be. If you don't have days and you would like to petition to receive days based on an extenuating circumstance, it can be reviewed by an attendance committee.
And who's on the attendance committee?
It is in draft form, but right now it would be members from benefit. It's a cross-section: benefits, legal, other HR employees, etc.
So if you guys say you deny it, then that person will get dock days?
Correct.
And will that person be excused? You'll get the dock days, but will you be excused from possibly being terminated?
It depends on the circumstances of the situation.
If your mother's sick or something. Okay, I'm just trying to understand who falls in It just wasn't very clear, and maybe I'm just being really slow. There was another question. The 5 days is what we're recommending in the policy to give. There was something else. Okay, you can.
Okay,
I'll come
Trustee
back.
Mitchke? And then Trustee Moran.
I want to get a handle on what the cost factor is to us here. 4 days versus 5 days, and then the attendance incentive payments that might be involved. So what would it cost the district per year to go to 5 days and put in place the attendance incentives that you have in mind?
Sure. So I worked with payroll. Trustee Jones asked a similar question, I believe, at the briefing. She asked specifically for an estimate of the cost for teachers. If teachers were to get 2 additional days, that it would cost approximately $5 million. Therefore, all employees would cost approximately $10 million for the 2 additional.
2 additional. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is initially you think that by going to 1 day and from 1 day to 2 days you would double the cost, but actually I'm not sure if that would be correct, because if your original proposal had 1 day and it had a price tag associated with it, but that price tag presumably included buying back or paying for up to 9 unused leave days, right? So that the 10th day is only, if we had a go from 4 to 5, we're only adding 1 more day, and we're only having to pay for 1 more day, as opposed to when we were at the proposal for 4 days, we would be paying possibly for up to 9 unused days, right? So what I'm getting at is I think the incremental cost of the 1 more day is a lot less than what the original proposal was for adding the first 1 day with the buyback. So if you can just tell me what's the cost of 4 days and what's the cost of 5 days and how you got there.
That was an approximation from payroll. I worked with payroll on the number. So in terms of an incremental increase doing 4 days versus 5 days, I would have to circle back with payroll. They were very helpful in collaborating and walking through the methodology, et cetera, but because they're not my calculations, I can't peel them back.
Okay. Do you know if they included an estimate for what we would pay for unused days?
Yes, so they created basically a mock-up. With the attendance incentive, the key factor there is how much you pay for a given day, right? So you can do a fixed cost on the day in terms of you don't have to necessarily pay at daily rate. And one of the suggestions that came from payroll that made sense was associating a fixed cost, taking a fixed amount of money and then dividing it to determine how much each day would be worth for an annual payout rather than making it less discrete, essentially, if you just left it open-ended. So their suggestion was to take a fixed pot of money and then determine the payout per day based on the fixed pot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Trustee Morath, and then I think there may be a couple more questions before we go to the second round. Trustee Morath?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that line of questioning. So the proposal includes a change so that we now will compensate employees. We can effectively buy back days that have been banked by employees moving forward.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
So that's a change in the existing policy, which does not allow buybacks?
Correct.
Okay. And in addition, the existing policy had a cap on the total number of local days that you could accumulate, which was 30 days, and that cap has been lifted by this local policy.
Correct.
So I think the essence of Trustee Mitchke's question was, if we didn't add any days associated with it, there is an actual cash cost to the district associated with the anticipated cash payout of the days that we could theoretically pay out moving forward. But you don't necessarily have that number.
for what the cash payout would be.
Right. Or is the number that you have, is it basically $5 million per day that has been accumulated in the aggregate for all employees?
So they really ran two equations. One equation was how much would it cost to return days to employees? Return in the sense that we currently have 3 days. How much would it cost to give us 5 local days instead of 3? The second calculation they ran is as an attendance incentive if there was an annual payout for X number of days over formula. So let's say you have to keep a minimum of 8 in your bank. It would have to be above the number 8. Then they ran a calculation on potentially how much we would pay out per day.
Okay, so that's different than buying back somebody's days at the end of their career or something like that, which we're going to accumulate. But the moral of the story then is that we've got a policy that helps employees insofar as we're going to be buying back their days rather than forcing them to, say, stop at the end of their career, mid-year to use the rest of their days, which should lead to attendance increases for folks towards the end of their careers. And we will also no longer cap them at the 30-day accumulation, so they can accumulate throughout the course of their career if they're never ill or take days. And then in addition to that, we're adding 2 days of liability for the district. And so each day of liability for the district that we're adding, if you just netted out the cost of that, it's about $5 million in total per day, so $10 million for the 2 days?
Correct.
Okay. So the problem that I have with that is based upon essentially multiple statements that I've heard during these conversations. One is that since this policy change was made a couple of years ago, we've actually seen attendance improve. And so we don't necessarily know that it's this policy, but this policy certainly didn't hurt us. And by going back on that, it could lead to reductions in employee attendance. The second thing that I want to mention is that with employees getting additional days, this will put more substitutes in the classrooms for our kids. And so assuming that those days are used, and why wouldn't they be used? Because we're giving them to them. So this will have some degree of academic harm in the district. And so at this time, I'd like to offer an amendment. And specifically, I'd like to strike the word 5 and replace it with 3 on page 3 in the paragraph numbered 3. And essentially changing it from 5 local days to 3 local days. And there must be a conforming change later on in the policy on page 7 under excessive absences, tardies, dock days. And in that case, it changes to 10 total to 8 total. So that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion to amend and seconded by Trustee Bingham. So to make sure that our parliamentarian knows exactly what the potential change is. Okay, trustees, is there any discussion? Okay, we'll start with Trustee Morath and then we'll move forward.
So again, the essence of this change is that this portion of the policy change. Now, I think the rest of the policy is fantastic. It's going to reduce absenteeism for our employees, and it's going to provide them financial compensation for the days that they don't use, while also allowing them to accumulate more days over the course of their career. I'm completely in favor of that. But these 2 additional days of liability do create about $10 million worth of liability per year for the district. That's new financial liability for the district. And if we were going to get some improvement in student outcomes for that, then I would be all for it. But in fact, we get the opposite. This will lead to an increase in the use of substitute teachers in the district, which I don't think we think is beneficial. And it goes against the history that has occurred since this policy change was made in the first place, which was a reduction in absenteeism. And so given the sort of absence of evidence that this will actually be helpful, it appears to me to be fiscally foolish for us to do this and academically harmful. Thank you.
Excuse me,
Okay.
Mr. President.
Hold on one second, Trustee Nuttlehead, and then we'll go to you.
You had something, Trustee Foreman? I'll let you go.
Okay, Trustee Foreman.
One of the things that's disturbed me a great deal since I got on this board is the disrespect in some ways to our employees. We spend money on a lot of things that I think's foolish. I'm a 30-year business owner, have had many employees, and what I know best is you're going to get the best out of your employees when you respect them and try to do good by them. We waste money. For me, I am for trying to do what's best for our employees, and that doesn't just mean the teachers. That means all of the employees. Carmen, when did the policy change? From 5 days to 3 days?
It was prior to my time. I would have to defer to
2011.
2011.
Our employees deserve those 2 days back.
Thank you, Trustee Foreman. Trustee Nuttall?
Can you give from 2011, 12, 13, 14, how many subs we use a day?
Off the top of my head?
Do y'all have, I'm pretty sure y'all keep that report.
Yeah, I would have to pull it from the system, which I
Yeah.
can do.
Okay,
I
so
don't have
I'm
it in
just
front of
curious to know subs per day, and they would do, when you generate the report, does it give the cost? Or
No,
just a
not
number?
typically. It gives you the number.
The number of subs we use per day? And that would include the guest teacher and the permanent subs?
Those are one and the same, but if you have a long-term sub versus a guest teachers are new, as you know. They're not going to go all the way back to 2011.
So do we keep a report of the guest teacher and the permanent sub in a separate category, or, sub that I call in and you need a sub for just that day? Is that a separate report?
Yes, the guest teacher allocations are coded differently than traditional subs.
Can you give me that report? Because I'm sure because that impacts dollar amounts. I'm sure we keep up with that in a system somewhere, right?
Hopefully. I can speak to 2012 and beyond. I can't speak to
Okay,
2011.
well, 2012, 13, and 14.
Okay.
Year to date.
Okay.
Of subs that we use. Was just curious to know the data when you're making a decision. But back to the doc days. If you go to 4 of 26, it says, American with disabilities shall be considered before termination. If paid leave has been exhausted, the employee shall remain on unpaid leave until the ADA consideration. And that's what you're talking about, the attendance committee, right?
No. That's Americans with
American,
disabilities.
okay.
Point of order.
Well, we're talking about days.
Okay, hold on one second.
Can you hold that question until we get back to the main?
Yeah, can we,
Well,
can we go back to that after we vote on this amendment?
But we're talking about days,
We-
and he made an amendment about changing the days, and I'm trying to,
And he made an amendment about changing the days.
and I'm talking about the days.
That was part of the amendment. It was part of the conversation. Trustee Nuttall, please ask a question.
Thank you. On page of 5 of 26, I'm going up to where the 10 annual allotted days, but we talk about family medical leave and local personal days, state personal days. After the exhaustion of days, the leave is unpaid. And I don't see where it referenced that it will go, you have an option with the attendance committee.
We are listing that information in the drafted regulation.
So in this policy, if we give the days, because now it's 8 days, right? It's
Correct.
3 local and 5 state.
Correct.
And then we're proposing to change that to 5 and 5 and a total of 10.
Right.
What it used to be a long time ago, too. So after the exhaustion of the days, the leave is unpaid. So how is the employee, they will go to the regulation to know that their leave must go to a attendance committee?
Correct.
But until it's approved by do you have to go to the attendance committee first for your days, extra days in the bank, or how do you?
It can be retroactive. So we know sometimes in life there are extenuating circumstances. Let's say, things happen where you just don't report to work, but you're out of days. You can send it through accordingly.
Okay, so that's going to be in the regulation about the
Correct.
attendance committee?
Correct.
Then on page 7 of 26, it says when the employee's absence become a concern or employees establish a pattern of absences or exceeds the 10 annual allotted days, with the exception of approved leave, such absences may be considered excessive. The employee may be subject to disciplinary action up and including termination of the employment. So it would be the principal that would determine, is it 10 days that current year? If I'm an employee and I have 50 days, is it 10 per year that I'm considered excessive?
Correct. Correct.
Excluding maternity leave,
Any
military
approved leave. Any approved leave, yes.
Excluding any approved leave.
Correct.
I won't get in that box of excessive. Okay, that doc days.
All right. Trustee Mitchke. I'm sorry, Trustee Blackburn and then Trustee Mitchke.
Now, I heard that we actually have better attendance. I think I heard that. But our superintendent has said we have bad attendance. So I'm a little bit confused. Do we have good attendance or do we have bad attendance? Because teachers are calling me and asking why the principal's on my back because I've missed 2 or 3 days, which tells them that there's an emphasis on increasing attendance in our schools, and we wouldn't be bothering about their days if there wasn't a problem with attendance. So actually we're trying to improve our attendance beyond the already improvement that we've made since this policy was taken from 5 to 3. So Superintendent Miles, I think we're doing something to improve our attendance of all of our staff, but especially our teachers, principals, assistant principals, and everybody else on the campus. Is that correct?
Yes, we need to raise our expectations and our standards around attendance. It may be improving, but it wasn't very good to begin with. Now, having said that, we know that most of our teachers are attending school, doing what they need to do in the classroom all the time. The number of doc days is huge, but it's a small percentage of teachers and campus staff who are guilty of that. And so we can improve our attendance, first of all, by having people follow the policy and not taking more days than what is allotted, and to make sure that they have approved leave if they're not there. So yes, our attendance has improved slightly over time, but it's still not where it needs to be. And we have quite a few teachers, not the majority by any means, abusing the attendance policy, and we hope that abuse will stop.
So that means that by adding 2 days, it's not going to increase it by $10 million because, as you just said, the vast majority of our teachers are attending schools on a regular basis. We have a small percentage of our teachers, as you just said, that are going into the dock, which means that they are consciously deciding not to get paid for not being at work. If a teacher is consciously deciding not to go to work or not to be at work and knowing that they will not get paid, there might be a reason for that. They might be ill, like Trustee Nuttall said, and they just don't have the days. For instance, if our younger teachers, younger experienced teachers, and a lot of them tend to use a lot of their days real quick. So if they have an injury, if they have an illness, and they don't have their days, then they have no other recourse than to just get docked. So I'm not so sure that I would look at the number of dock days without looking at the reasons for the dock days. And Carmen, I'm always asking for the reason for things. So I don't think that by adding 2 days, it's going to equate to an automatic $10 million in cost. We do budget money for substitutes. Every year, we budget money for substitutes. So if you want to look at, Jim is here, he can tell us how much we've been overspending our substitute pay. Right now, I don't think we are overspending our substitute pay because we have a posting to try to find more substitutes. So I don't think adding 2 more days to the available days is going to break the bank. I don't think we're going to find ourselves spending an additional $10 million because I don't think just because teachers have an extra 2 days that they're going to use an additional 2 days. As Superintendent Miles just says, the vast majority of our teachers are coming to work on a regular basis, which means they will not use those days. Possibly we should be talking to our Wanda Paul and her group and make sure that her people are coming to work on a regular basis, and maybe talk to Carmen DeVille and the rest of her group and make sure that they're coming to school coming to work on a regular basis. But then when you guys are out, there's no need for a substitute. I'm just picking on because I saw you turn around. I'm sorry, the teacher in me, I saw you not paying attention to me, so I called on you. But I digressed. She's paying attention to me now, so she's gonna. But I'm just trying to say, don't equate an additional 2 days, meaning that all 20,000 of our employees are going to use those additional 2 days. If anything, I think it's going to be a morale boost for our teachers who need something right now. I don't think it's going to be a financial liability on us on this. As Superintendent Miles said, we're doing something to try to increase our attendance for all of our employees, especially on our campus. And whatever you guys are doing, teachers are paying attention to it because they're calling me about it. So I don't think adding 2 days is going to affect this. So Trustee Morath, I'll be against your amendment.
Trustee Mitchke?
Well, I am concerned about the cost factor, and if we're talking about adding another $10 million in costs, I think that's significant, and I would like to be able to feel good that it's not going to add $10 million in costs, but I think we have to rely on the administration's cost projections rather than trying to hope that it comes out differently. But I also understand that this plan was an integrated plan designed to put incentives into the system for better attendance and to add one additional day. And as I look at trying to balance all of the different needs we have in the district, and you've probably heard me say this so many times now, but we do have a real need to expand pre-K, and I'm trying to figure out a way to make sure that we have the available funds to do that. And so my thought would be to go back to the original 4-day proposal that the administration had made. That would improve the number of days over what the situation is now, and we would put in all the incentives to buy back days and keep days that otherwise would have expired. So my thought would be that we would go to amend Trustee Morath's amendment to go from adding 2 days to adding 1 day, and I think to make that amendment, we would have to insert 4 where Trustee Morath would have put 5, and to insert
4 where I
Yeah,
said 3.
well, 3,
4 where you put
sorry,
3.
and 9 where he had changed it from 8.
As a point of parliamentary inquiry,
Yes.
rather than going through the motions
Right.
of having 2 separate amendments, can I simply accept that change to the original amendment?
Well, if there's no objection, is there an objection? Okay, so hearing no objections, we are now voting on a motion as presented by Trustee Mitchke to amend that particular motion. It's still Trustee Morath's motion as is accepted, but the numbers now are not 5-3, it is 5-4, and it is 10 to 9.
8 to 9.
8 to 9. Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
It's 9.
It's 9. 9 total. Okay, so 4
personal.
and 9 total. Trustee Foreman.
Jim Terry, could you come up here, please? I had a question. Thank you. Oh, you know this one. You don't need the books. What is our current fund balance?
300, after the acceptance of the CAFR this evening, it will be just over 342 million.
And what was our fund balance last year? the closure?
281 million.
Okay. And what do you project it to be at the end of this year?
Well, if I was...
Just a rough.
360 million.
That's what I wanted to know. Just to address a couple of things. Trustee Mitch K., we all want to advance pre-K. But we currently have 1,300 slots that are not filled. I'll talk about advancing when we get the 1,300 slots that are unfilled. What I've got to do today is to try to figure out how do we keep good employees. We don't have to talk about the morale is low, because it is. We all know it. We all feel it. No matter where we go, we hear it. So I will not be supporting that.
Okay, thank you,
5 days or nothing.
Thank you, Trustee Foreman. All right, Trustee Bingham.
I think that the 4 days is a good compromise. I think any time, earlier this evening, we talked about IR schools, and one of the things that we have to be cognizant of is the fact that we need a highly effective teacher in the classroom every day with our students. And a substitute is not going to be able to give the same degree of instruction as a regular classroom teacher. And this is what concerns me about the increase. I do think that with the 4 days, that does give an increase to what our teachers currently have, so I think that is a nice benefit to give. But then it also allows, we also talked earlier about more money going into various schools that needed it. I think that $5 million could be used in a lot of really good ways. And having said that, it doesn't mean that I don't realize the importance of keeping teachers happy. But I also think we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need teachers, highly effective teachers in every classroom every day, and that those monies can be spent in other directions. So I will be supporting the amendment.
Okay, Trustee Blackburn and then Trustee Nettle.
Now, I hear us talking about $5 million for 1 day added, $10 million for 2 days added. Now, somebody help me to understand. Are we saying that if we add 2 more days, that we're going to add $10 million to the budget because teachers are going to use that and we're going to have to hire substitutes in order to pay for those days? Is that what we're saying by that $10 million projection? Because I don't want us to sit up here thinking that if we go for 1 day, it's going to cost us $5 million more, because we are not talking about a budget amendment. This is not a budget amendment. I think if it was going to actually cost us $5 million more or even $10 million more, the administration would have come with a budget amendment. The board is not making a budget decision right now.
So, Jim, maybe you can, maybe I can add, or you can add to what I got to say. I think eventually it is a liability, and I think it's okay to take that liability. But if a teacher doesn't use a day, most of them will be able to cash it out down the road. So we will be paying for that day down the road, whether they use it or cash it out. It's still going to be used one way or the other. I think it's worth it to add a day. That was our original proposal. I think the other part, being able to cash out days, is a big benefit and incentive for teachers.
I'm not familiar with the numbers, but it would be my judgment that that number includes not only the additional subs for those 2 days, but also the incentive amount to buy back the days that people would turn in. I will look at those numbers and get back
Was that
to
part
you
of
all.
was that part of the budget amendment?
No, it's not
I'll
been
still
part of
say-
the budget amendment.
Even the version that you guys brought to us, it was not part of the budget amendment.
No.
So,
Trustee Nettle and then Trustee Jones.
We just, the board just approved a policy, DEA, and it said in an effort to attain and retain the best talent. and we said we wanted to offer them a flexible work schedule, and we talked about the liabilities, but that was in an effort to retain and attract the best talent. I think our teachers are our greatest resource, and I would love to receive that data, possibly if I can get it as soon as possible, for the mere fact that you talk about substitute teachers, Trustee Bingham. We have permanent subs in the class now. I live it. My daughter's in this district, and my goddaughter is in this district. And we have teachers who have left the district, AP teachers. So our children are being taught by subs today, permanent subs. Do we know an estimate number of how many guest teachers we have? Because I know in one school we have about 8 of them, permanent subs. So when you talk about substitute, I think offering 5 days to our teachers, they are our greatest resource. They are the ones in the classroom with 26 and 27 students making it happen. But yet we pass a policy for administration to have the flexibility to work at home and get some extra benefits, but yet we won't give teachers 2 additional days. Yet we won't give teachers 2 additional days. So they are the ones who make it happen for our students. They are the ones we need to take care of and have the highest regard for. Our job is easy. Their jobs is easy. But yet we are talking about not giving them 2 days and talking about the liability, but Dr. Blackburn went over all the liabilities that possible when you work from home. But we can't give them 2 days. We're dealing with a massive exit of teachers now. I'm dealing with it at home. Her AP Spanish teacher is leaving. AP Chemistry is gone. Went to another district. Parents across the district are dealing with subs. So I don't think that's the problem here. So I will not be supporting. I think our teachers deserve the extra day. I think it's a morale builder. I think it's just not a big deal to give them 5 days local and 5 days state. I think it's just the right thing to do as board members. We're going to pass DEC and give administration, and I think we can give the teachers 2 days. So Trustee Callum, call y'all. Hope you support this for the teachers.
Thank you, Trustee Noto. Trustee Jones.
Thank you. Since we're
Thank you.
difference between 4 days and 5 days is basically $5 million. I mean, that's really what we're sitting here. I mean, I think there's pretty well good consensus around this horseshoe that the rest of the policy changes are definitely something we can all support. So realistically, what we're sitting here having a debate about is the difference of 1 day. I'm looking at the CAFR, and forgive me if I'm looking at the wrong thing, Jim, but on page 36, there's something called compensated absences. Is that where the liability is covered? Would that be the category for where that would be recorded?
On the balance sheet it is, but I think you want to look on the income statement. It actually would be in 6112 object code, which is subs for professionals, which last year we spent 15 million, and this year we're projecting to spend 12.5 million.
So it's really more of an accrual. I mean, right? We take it on as a liability. It sits on our financial statement, but it's not something that we're necessarily quote-unquote spending, as others have sort of talked about. But it is still a liability. It is still an obligation that at some point you're going to have to satisfy. The question is, what kind of health do you have at the time you're satisfying it to take care of it? And right now we're sitting in pretty excellent financial health. And speaking of health, it's something I didn't quite have as much of an appreciation for, but healthcare, anybody who's entertaining any kind of health issue in today's world, healthcare takes a tremendous amount of time. I mean, one of the challenges with any system is between testing and, going off and having to manage healthcare of an individual or even of a family member, it's a lot of time. And that's one thing our teachers don't always have the freedom for, and something we should consider. And in today's world, depending on the age of teachers and depending on where they are in their own life cycle, having elder parents, having children, being sandwich families, as many are. These are real considerations. And if we're really trying to attract the best talent, we do need to make it easy for that talent to work within constraints and at the same time not lose their compensation or lose their opportunity to manage that benefit to their needs and not to ours. I don't believe people, I mean, I think in any system you've got to make sure nobody's abusing it. I don't think that's the discussion here, and I'm a little bit challenged by the idea that people would just unilaterally abuse it. But I do think in today's world, time is money, and time and the flexibility for time and the flexibility in how we use time is important to our workforce. We've heard that conversation, but I think when it relates to teachers, they have less degrees of freedom than others who can manage around schedules that give them that flexibility. We don't have that in our teaching workforce. And it is a competitive advantage to be able to be attractive. I mean, you'd rather pay an extra day, the $5 million being inconsequential relative to losing that particular teacher, especially if it's a high-performing teacher and someone who really does want to continue but finds themselves financially caught between a rock and a hard place. So I'm just as comfortable with 5 days based on the idea that we should try to increase flexibility. This district at one point was at 5 days, and I believe it was during the financial crisis and the period that we had to cut back dramatically that we changed that. I would just say, I think out of fairness and also deference for our large workforce and their needs, this is another type of benefit that we should think about affording our teachers. And I know our best teachers want to stay with us, but I've heard from many, and many have reached out to me on their own journeys. I mean, breast cancer hits 1 in 7 women, so do the math. And, it's a pretty time-consumptive period of treatment, and, you can function quite fine, but you need the time to be able to go deal with the medical end of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Jones, Trustee Cowan, and then Trustee Mitchke, and then just making sure, Trustee Mitchke will have been the only one that I have spoken twice on this particular issue, and then I'd like to speak before we go ahead and take a vote. So Trustee Cowan and then Trustee Mitchke.
All right. Maybe I'm slow tonight. I'm trying to really figure out what's going on here. We came to this meeting, and on our dock it says 5 days. To me, that says the administration wants to give 5 days, and we're sitting up here saying, I know you want to give 5 days, but do you really want to give 5 days? Maybe you want to go back to 3 days. And you're exactly right, Trustee Jones. This policy was changed in a time of transition and financial crisis. So at the time, changing the policy made sense. We are recovering, have recovered, are in good times, have great audits, have good financials. And we need to do whatever we can to, benefit our employees within reason, okay, within reason. And I think the people that exceed their days off are going to exceed their days off and just throw the payday away and just say, hey, I'm going to take a day off whether I get paid for it or not. Maybe the conversation needs to be had of why so many people are taking so many days off. Okay? We need to look into the reasons why. So I'm all for 5 days. The administration is saying 5 days. I support their decision.
Thank you, Trustee Cowan. Trustee Mitchke.
Yeah, in this conversation, I heard that the number of days that local days that the employees used to have was 5,
Correct.
and then it went down to 3 in 2011. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Mitchke. Before we close out this conversation on the amendment, I want to make sure that I get a few words in. And so let me first just say the use of hyperbolic language to say a mass exodus and, complete 100%, people sharing the sentiment 100%, just upset with all the stuff going on. That's hyperbolic. Let's be real about the situation and the numbers. and the history and the trends. Let's be real about it. I have lots of conversations with teachers as it relates to their environment. And I hear lots of different comments, positive, negative, neutral. That's the real situation at hand. Let's move away from the hyperbolic for just a second. Let's also talk about the actual, what we're discussing right now. This is not I don't think anybody on here trying to make an amendment to take this back to 3 days or 4 days is against teachers. There are really good arguments being made to change it from 5 to 3 as it relates to finances. I just happen to disagree with that argument on this particular case. But to pit people against each other and say you're either for the teachers or against the teachers is not the right approach to have when we're talking about this particular item, and any item moving forward. The administration has proposed a policy. They started at 4 days. They've moved it to 5 days. There's the potential for more money to be spent on this particular policy. I understand that. I recognize it. I do agree in some ways that we need to make sure if we're going to take this district to the next level, we free up money to be able to spend on things like early childhood education or the expansion of school choice. We do need to recognize that and look for district dollars to do those things. But I know, having been an educator in Dallas ISD, that if we are going to make this work, it is going to begin with our educators. And we need to send them a signal as a board and as an administration that we believe in them, that we appreciate them, and that for every increment of accountability that we are asking from them, we provide them an increment of support. I say that often. This is an increment of support. Our finances are improving. I think we can take the time and show our staff, our teachers, that we support them by supporting 5 days. The last thing I'll ask is to Carmen. This is a policy change, and this policy change will not be impacting our educators this year. Is that correct?
I would need clarification on when it would be implemented.
Okay. Who would you get that clarification from?
Legal.
From legal. Because I want to make sure that if we're going to change this policy, what doesn't happen is we have a change immediately and then mass confusion amongst the ranks of teachers as to whether or not they can take days or not take days. So before we move forward with the actual change to the policy, I want to make sure that we know that.
As I understand it, from legal, it will be effective immediately unless we take some other action or clarify at this point in time.
Okay. So we're not going to talk about that just yet because this is a motion to amend. The other question, though, that I have is this is not just for teachers. This is for all staff members.
Correct.
So we would be sending a signal to our teachers and the rest of our staff that we trust them, that we want to believe that they're going to use these days wisely if they so choose, and that we support them. With that being said, I'm not going to be supporting the amendment that has been presented by Trustee Morath, and I would ask my fellow trustees to not support this amendment and to bring this back to the main motion so we can just clarify what we need to do and send a 9-0 vote signal to our staff and our teachers in particular as it relates to the main motion. So trustees, with the motion as amended, all those in favor of the motion as amended, changing the number from 5 to 4 and 10 to 9, please cast your votes. Well, we have it on the screen again, sorry. All those in favor, yay. All those against, nay.
The motion fails, 1 voting yes, 7 voting no, and 1 recusing or abstaining.
Okay, so we are now back to the main motion. The main motion is 5 days and 10 days. I want to make sure we have some clarification for this board as to whether we believe this policy needs to happen effective immediately or we need to take action to ensure that it begins next school year.
Trustees, do we have any questions or comments on that, or any motions to amend the language to ensure that that happens, or any direction we want to give the administration?
Move for the question.
Okay, the question has been called. Is there a second for the question being called? Okay, it's been seconded by Trustee Nuttall. Yes, ma'am.
To resolve that timing question as a result, I mean, if we do move to vote, do we need to know when the implementation and how that will...
We'll accept that point of information. Well, that point of information needs to go to who, Jack?
The policies are effective immediately unless there's another date in there, but if the administration can't reasonably get this going until next year, then I think that's going to be part of your consideration.
Okay.
And that's up to the administration.
Okay, well, before we start a conversation one way or the other, the question has been called to end the debate, and it has been seconded. We need to take a vote on that. All trustees in favor of ending the debate at this very moment, please raise your hands. Okay, all those opposed to ending debate at this time, please raise your hands.
So we're going to go just, we don't know what the heck we're going to do with this.
Okay, can you read the votes for me?
It was 6 to 2? Yes. I abstained. She abstained. And she abstained.
Okay, you said 6 voting in favor to end debate, 2 voting against, and 1 abstaining.
Yes.
The debate has ended. Trustees, we are now back to the main motion. All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes, and all those opposed, vote nay.
Motion passes, 8 voting yes, 1 voting no.
Trustee Morath.
Just a point of order, if I could request that the administration, when they make a decision as to how these days accrue, send a notice out to employees just so that there is clarity on this.
As soon as you possibly can. I think it'd be extremely helpful. There needs to be no confusion whatsoever about the change that's been made.
A point of information?
Yes, ma'am.
Doesn't this also require, and this is, I guess, consideration for our finance team, that you capture the accounting on this appropriately?
Yeah,
Did we not
we
need to-
we will. There won't be any problem.
Why, point of order, point of order,
Point of information or
point of information.
Okay.
I thought we ended debate.
Yeah, debate is ended.
Okay, so why are we talking about it?
It was a point of information.
But thought we ended debate.
Debate is ended, and you've
Okay.
just adopted the motion, thereby approving the amendment to Board Policy DEC Local, compensation of benefits, leaves, and absences with no financial impact. Our next item is 7A6, to approve the amendment to Board Policy DFFA Local, reduction in force, financial exigency, no financial impact. It's a second read sponsored by Carmen Darville, Chief of Human Capital Management. Consent item number 6, pulled by Trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion?
So
Moved by Dr. Blackburn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Cowan. Trustees, is there any discussion? Trustee Foreman?
Carmen,
Yes.
on page 3 of 7,
Yes.
under criteria for decision, number 2, where you made the change,
Correct.
could you explain why that was put in there?
Sure. DFFA is a TASB recommendation, and they had suggested that when available, that consecutive formal appraisals from more than 1 year. So essentially, when you have more information, that you use the information that's been made available to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Foreman. Trustees, any other conversations? Okay. Trustees, please cast your votes.
Motion passes, 9 voting yes.
You've just adopted the motion, thereby approving the amendment to Board Policy DFFA Local, reduction in force, financial exigency with no financial impact.
Don't go, Carmen, don't go.
Next item is 7A7, to approve the budget amendments for November 20th, 2014. Consent item number 7, pulled by Trustees Bernadette Nuttall and Joyce Foreman. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Moved by Trustee Bingham. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Nuttall. Trustees, is there any discussion?
Yes.
Trustee Nuttall.
I would like to talk about the 5 additional special ed teachers that we're approving. When I looked at there are 145 children at Billy Earl Dana Special Ed, and we have 12 teachers and two units of FLMS. So we're having an average of 8 special ed, our special needs, special ed education students to a teacher. So why are we adding additional 5 teachers?
Trustee Nuttall, when we first went in a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that the team did was take a look at the schedule, master schedule. And in that situation, there were significant changes to the schedules for the special ed students so that they would be able to be in classes that were appropriate for them. So there were pretty many changes. At the time, the team felt that probably there would need to be 5 more teachers. I will tell you, I hope you will approve this tonight. However, the special ed team is going to be there in the morning, and what I want to do is assure you that if the special ed team believes we do not need all 5, we will not use all 5.
So there'll be a total of 17 special ed teachers?
If we need all 5, there could be. My belief is that we won't need all 5, but at this point in time, I can't tell you exactly how many.
Are they inclusion teachers?
Ma'am, I do not know. There's probably mostly inclusion. That's my guess. There could be some self-contained teachers as well.
So are you adding additional students to
No,
special
ma'am.
ed?
No, it's the way they're scheduled. It's how many are in a classroom. And there were more special ed students than the team that did the rescheduling felt that there were more special ed students in each class that needed to be. They wanted to spread them around so there weren't quite so many in each classroom.
So 146 students are currently in special ed there. Okay. Could you give me something? I mean, that's just 146 are in special ed, and we have 12 there now, and we're adding additional 5. That's just a lot of, and we have other needs in other areas of the city, and that is Imagine 2020 school, and there are other needs in other parts of the city that need help.
Totally understand
So I'm just trying to figure out, are you adding 100 more kids?
No, ma'am. As I explained, we were trying to make sure that there weren't concentrations of special ed students in the regular classrooms. So, again, they're going to take another look at it in the morning, and it's just the timing of when we could get the team out there, and then tonight where you need to make the decision to approve or not.
I guess in all the reports that come out about African Americans and African American boys, can I have the data on just the special ed, how many by ethnicity in special ed,
Sure.
and then by boy, male, female? I'm just curious to know.
I'll be glad to provide
if
that
we
to
have
you.
a great amount. I'm just trying to figure
Yes,
it
ma'am.
out.
I'll be glad to
17
get it to you.
teachers, 12 and 5.
And before you leave, I'd like to just follow up a little bit on what Trustee Nuttall was talking about. I have a grave concern that we would have that many special ed teachers in that school. That is labeling our children. I'd like to know who made the decision that we would need to add an additional 5. I heard you say that they're going to meet, but somebody had to make the decision to call for 5 more. And I'd like to know who made that decision. And then, what's the student population at Dade?
861, is that right? It's about 800. 850, 860.
8 something.
8 something.
And
850 or more.
And 100, and how many are in special ed now?
About 140.
About 140. 146 are in special ed. And we're talking about possibly putting more in special ed.
No, ma'am, we're not talking about more students. We are not talking about adding students to special ed.
So what are we talking about?
The reason for the request for the 5 teachers is that the scheduling of the 140 or so students was such that they were concentrated in certain classrooms, and that's not always good for the special ed students. They should be in they shouldn't be concentrated like the whole class is all special ed. So in scheduling them so that there were fewer per classroom, that means more inclusion teachers need to be added to the campus to support those students. Again, there's not going to be more there might be more special ed students if any more are identified, but that's not what this is about. This is about adding potentially up to 5 teachers so that students can be supported through the inclusion process.
Well, I can't speak for Trustee Nuttall, but I'm going to be watching this very closely because
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't want our students labeled as special ed when we need to be doing other things. And that's an easy out, and we cannot afford that. And that's all I had to say on that. Where's Jim? Jim? Yeah. Where's Jim? Hi again.
Hello.
I asked a question in the briefing, and it was in regards to Teach for America.
Correct.
where
We
we
blew
ha-
that up on the tracker, but I do have the
I
numbers
got
here.
it. I got it right here in front of me. But what's troubling for me is when I look at 2011, 2012, we paid $389,904. Your numbers. Is that correct?
Correct.
In 2012, 2013, it was 214,134. And in 2013, 2014, 339,000. But I'm looking at a bill for 807,000 for membership fees. So how did we jump from 300 to 800?
We jumped from 389,000 to 768,000, just under 769,000, and that jump is the number of Teach for America teachers. I believe the amount is 3,000 apiece.
How many?
So
How many?
I believe it's 3,000 apiece.
But how many teachers?
Well, I could do
Help me with the quick
I
math.
could quick math. So that would be about 130 teachers for fiscal year 14.
So for fiscal year
Oh, I'm sorry, that'd be for fiscal year 13, and then for fiscal year 14, it would be 250, 60, somewhere there.
So we almost doubled
Yes.
our Teach for America teachers?
Yes, according to the math.
Just to clarify something, Trustee
Help me.
Foreman, you asked about why was there such a jump between the first cost of 389 to 768. And the part of the reason that's the case is because you have, originally you're paying for first year teachers in the program. It's a 2-year program. So once the first year teachers move to become second year teachers, you have a new cohort of first year teachers. So it's going to be the combined cost of having people in both their first and second year. And so then the next number that Jim shared, the 800, which is where we are now, you have another group where you have first and second year. So that's why it's hovering around that dollar point.
And so when is this contract over?
I would have to check the document.
Okay, could you get that for me, please?
Sure.
Because I'm real concerned that we're paying $800,000, almost $1 million membership fees. That's the way it's determined on here, when we have a lot of needs in this district. Okay, got another question for you, Jim.
Yes.
If you turn to, let's see, what page is this? Page 22 of 51.
I'm not quite sure where you're at.
Oh, Miller. It's kind of close to the bottom, maybe first, second, third, fourth column up, kind of in the middle, where it says payee, and it's Miller Educational Consultant Services for a cost of $292,000.
What page?
Page 22 of 51.
Okay, I believe we sent you all of their bills,
Yeah, you did, but I have a question.
okay?
Because it appears that some of the services on the bills that you sent me, some of the services of training took place July the 28th
Okay,
of 2014. And it looks like a purchase order wasn't done until August of 2014. So was the purchase order done after the expenditure?
I would have to research that.
I think it was. I did research it. And I think it was. And what is troubling to me, trustees, again, this is a situation where the administration has gone around the policy and actually...
It would have been brought to you as a ratification if we caught it.
It should have been a ratification, but it wasn't. It came as, just as the bills. So if, I have a problem with that also, because we can't afford to continue to make those kinds of situations. And with the policy that you brought forth, you said you're going to take care of the people who did that, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I want to see the action on this particular one. And this actually came out of, I call it human resource, you call it human capital, correct?
Well, it was a professional development, and I do know that the professional development for TEI was in fact brought in for ratification, but...
It was brought in for ratification?
Yes, it was, before the board. I don't know if this is the particular one. I will have to look and I will check, but I am aware of that fact.
You're aware that there was a purchase order cut after?
No, what I'm saying is that I know that we brought to the board for ratification professional development, dealing with TEI professional development. Now, if it was this particular one, I don't know. I'll have to research that.
So what was that ratification for?
Well, as I say, the ratification we brought forth, one of the ratifications we brought forth was for professional development for TEIs.
I got you, but why was it a ratification is what I'm asking.
Because a purchase order was not, it started before a purchase order.
Okay, so that sounds like this is the one I'm talking about.
It could be.
Okay.
It could be.
Okay, so check on that. I think
I
I
will.
have the purchase order number. I was trying to find it here. I think it's PO number 528192. So
Okay, thank you. Make
that
it a little
will
bit easier.
help me out a great deal, because those are the things that we're talking about. We're not going to be doing those anymore.
Correct.
And I had one other one, but I'll pass until I find my last one.
Trustees, any other questions? So there are no other questions, but we'll wait for, okay, Trustee Jones.
I'm going to be supporting this, and Dr. Smisko, I fully understand how we meet needs, but I'm still challenged by the fact that I've got two schools that are overcrowded in my backyard where the special needs kids are being put into classroom structures that don't work. I mean, the accommodations are not suitable for what they need, and part of that's the space, part of that's the resources, part of that's the mix, but I mean, we've got these situations all over the district. I don't think, you know, Dade is obviously in need, and I want to take nothing from them, but I'm concerned because $340,000 is one amendment, is not a substantial amount of money and resource. Dade is already an Imagine 2020 school. We don't have a lot of the same Imagine 2020-like resources around the district at schools with just as high poverty, just as high challenges in terms of, the issues that you'll see on those campuses around academic performance. So I'd like to see a little more of a strategy around these areas where, we do need to shore up funding and dedicate that funding to specific resources to support the campus. But right now, it feels more scattershot, and the $340,000 is not a small amount for one campus when we've got over 220 some odd campuses, where we can make the case pretty much at any one for additional things that would help increase their academic achievement opportunities. So, and I think I had asked before for an analysis on the IR schools, specifically around the I-2020 versus the other campuses, as well as looking at, what other resources should we be putting against the IRs. I know we had that conversation at length earlier. What kind of recommendations and what would that price out at? Because it feels to me like, we're probably not spending enough money, and $340 at one campus tells me that there's a lot more to be done across the other 42 campuses. So, thank you.
Point well made. Thank you.
Oh, no, well, if you'd like to comment, I'm happy to.
In the area of special ed in particular, we're in the process of taking a more comprehensive look at the program across the district, and so I believe that you will see some requests in the next year's budget cycle. But I'll get with you afterwards about the specific campuses you're thinking about that we might take a particular look at.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, trustees. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-1.
Okay, trustees, you've just adopted the motion, thereby approving the budget amendments for November 20th, 2014. Our next item is 7A10, to ratify the amounts of bills, claims, and accounts for September 1st, 2014 to September 30th, 2014. Consent item number 10, pulled by trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Moved by trustee Bingham. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Cowan. Trustees, is there any conversation? Hearing no conversation, trustees, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 8-0.
You've just adopted the motion, thereby approving to ratify the amounts of bills, claims, and accounts for September 1st, 2014 to September 30th, 2014. We voted on 7A12, and now we're on 7A13, to approve the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2014. Consent item number 13, pulled by trustees Eric Cowan and Miguel Solis. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Bingham. Do I have a second? Second. Seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, is there any discussion? Trustee Nuttall.
Yes.
On page 9, when you look at curriculum and staff development, we went up 11%. Instructional leadership, we went up 22.7%.
Excuse me, what are you looking at?
Page 9 of the is it this the
Comprehensive financial report?
Yes. That we received on page 9 of the, I think it was 100 and some pages. Well, maybe I'll start it. Let's start at page 5. You see what I'm talking about? The draft.
Yes.
I see the unassigned fund balance from last year to this year. We spent $100 million. We're lower $100 million because it's $158 million is unassigned and available for spending at the district discretion. But when you look at last year's, let me find it. It was 175 million is assigned, 158.9 million is unassigned and available for spending at the district's discretion. Last year, 263 million is unassigned and available for the spending of the district discretion. So can you tell me what
Yes,
happened?
it's not apples to apples. When we put out the QSCB bonds, we have to note as a assignment of the 143 to remind everybody from an accounting point of view that that will be due to be paid in 2033 or in 19 years. So if you want to look at the previous year, the 263, you need to subtract out of that 143 million, and now you would have apples to apples comparison.
So out of the 263.6, take out the 100 million?
Subtract out 143
So it'd be
million.
163 million?
You would take the 263 and subtract out 143.
43.
Right, so that would then, apples to apples comparison last year to this year would be 120 million versus 159 million this year.
So we spent 129 million.
We haven't spent any.
That's just the,
We've just an assignment of the fund balance. The cash available is essentially 300 and, well, you have to take out the non-spendable portion, so it'd be about $334 million cash I have available. That cash balance we use so that we don't have to borrow money for cash flow purposes. But for accounting purposes, I have to put it as an assignment.
okay, and so we have 175 million is assigned,
Yes.
and then 158.9 million is unassigned.
Right.
That is available for spending, minus that 100.
Well, if you were to look at it on a cash basis, all of that cash is available. It's just that management has made a decision with board approval to, go out, and we borrowed $143 million so that we could redo the middle school science labs and also to do the HVAC system. And so from an accounting, to do the appropriate accounting, we have to say to the board and to the public, of our $343 million that we have, you have to remember that $143 million needs to be paid in 2033. And then also, we have another $25 million that the board has approved that says that we got that for the Dallas Education Center in the future.
Okay. The other question on page 9, I noticed that in instructional leadership, we're 22% up in spending, 11% on curriculum and staff development, and student transportation is 40% up from June 30th, 2013 to June 30th, 2014. So on the student transportation in the report, it was about we're up 40%.
Well, the percentage there on page 9 is a percent change or increase, decrease. So the change in services under program revenues. Now also, this amount is for all governmental activities. So what this means is this is not just the general fund, but this is debt service, capital project services, and food service. Remember, as a board, when you approve the budget, by law, you have to approve the general fund, which is supported by the tax, and then you also have to approve the debt service and the food service. Now, if you want to look at what you probably want to do is look at the just called the general fund, which is further down into the CAFR.
Okay, it was brought to our attention that we said in our audit that the transportation increase was due to a transportation contract increase from Dallas County Schools. So was that a route increase or?
Yes, it was. Remember, we had all of those special routes that we had to put on. Ms. Paul could probably address the detailed issues to that.
February 27th, but I was just saying maybe we want to say due to a transportation on our part, transportation contract increase, made it like maybe Dallas County went up in their fees versus us having a route, increasing in routes. to clarify that, because
Okay.
it reads as transportation contract increase, that they went up in their fees, but they didn't. So I just said for clarifying language.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Noto. Trustees, any other comments? Okay. Trustee Jones?
We just got the CAFR last night, and this board,
I apologize.
well, but this board hasn't had an opportunity to really go through it. And this is not a document, if I'm not mistaken, that is reviewed otherwise by Deloitte. In other words, this hasn't been audited or has any real oversight.
No, this has been audited.
But in a very narrow,
No,
audited by?
this has been audited by Deloitte, and Deloitte has come up with an unqualified opinion saying that these financial statements as CAFR is good, more than good. They had no comments in terms of what they saw and what they looked at. Part of the reason, okay, that you got it so late is that they finished their audit, and when they finished their audit, what they're auditing are these financial statements that you're looking at. And they got it to us Tuesday. It was actually late Tuesday. I did mean to get this out to you Wednesday morning, but my miscommunications, it did not get out to you until Wednesday. But these financial statements, they have spent since August studying and auditing. They actually started in the field work in May. They finished up with the original field work, and then they came back and they finished up Tuesday.
So, do we have a written statement, an unqualified opinion as it relates to the CAFR?
Yes.
Where
they
is
read
it?
it to you. They just read it to you, it was about 3 hours ago, I believe.
No, that has to do with our financial statements.
These
but
are our financial
But
statements.
the CAFR financial statements are not exactly the same as our audited financial
These
statements.
are our audited financial statements. It's the same.
There's a lot of information in there, Dr. Terry, that is not
That's right.
exactly
The
a
only thing
one-to-one.
that's not audited is the statistical section in some of the other tables.
Right.
But if you want, I can go through all of the pages and show you that what is audited, but essentially, these are our audited financial statements that the auditors have been working on.
Right, but the financial report, and this is one of my favorite reports, as you know, and I'm probably one of the few people that likes to read it.
I have a little bit of feedback going on.
Run that person out, right? One of the challenges I have is the CAFR is more than just financial statements, whether audited or otherwise reviewed. It's a bunch of statements in a lot of key areas around your financial positioning, and that can include areas of operations, risk management, all sorts of things. So my only point is that this board really needs more time than overnight to go through with some degree of diligence that supports their ability to say, yes, this is correct. Because I mean, even as it stands right now, any mistakes, how are they corrected? And I found a series of edits, and some of them minor, some of them not so minor, and that concerns me because we haven't had that opportunity to do that part of our diligence. So how do we address that right now at the 11th hour?
If you will email me, I will see that the edited changes will get in. Part of the slowness is, in fact, when we got the audited financial statements, when these are the audited financial statements on Tuesday, my folks sat there and read and went through, and that's why you received them at 10 o'clock last night.
Dr. Terry, I'm comfortable with the fact your team did an excellent job. What I'm uncomfortable with is the idea that we haven't, as a body who's about to adopt something, done the proper diligence on all of the material, not just a piece of it, which is the audited financials that are in here. There are parts of there are financial representations made in here that are beyond what Deloitte looks at. So from where I'm sitting, it's important for us to be able to have that opportunity. And
The parts that aren't audited are marked audited, and I believe the only thing that's not audited is the statistical section. You also have in there the compliance section, which is the federal government section. So these are the audited financial statements.
well, again, there are various statements and representations and other things made that go into other areas that I believe it is incumbent on this body to make sure it's done its job going through it. So the question, I guess, on the table is, if there are edits or changes to be made and we adopt it in the current form, have we foreclosed that opportunity? Because it seems to me if you adopt something, you're adopting what's in front of you. You're not adopting it subject to.
Correct.
So that's the dilemma I would put forth, along with the idea that we need more than 24 hours. It's just not good governance to sit here and say that it's appropriate to be given as an important report such as this, and not have that opportunity to do the requisite diligence.
Okay. Trustees,
And-
any more?
Well, I mean, the problem is if it's got errors, then how is it corrected if it's adopted?
Well, we will correct certainly English and grammar, but I don't believe that there's any numbers.
Well, it's not a question of the numbers. There's other statements made in here that are, in some places, not complete or inaccurate or don't represent all of the requisite information that otherwise could be captured, and I can walk through it. But right now, I mean, I sent you an email about this and didn't get a...
I'm sorry, I didn't see the email.
Clarity on what we do. I mean, I'd like to adopt this. I'd like to move forward, but right now, I'm uncomfortable with the idea that any change that would need to be made would be foreclosed upon if we move forward in adopting it, and there are things that do need...
Well, I do believe last year the GAFRA was given to you the day of the board meeting when it was adopted.
Well, actually, no, I believe
Okay.
that was not the case, but-
Let's hear from a couple of other trustees on the particular issue. Trustees, any other questions? Trustee Nuttall.
On page 13, Dr. Terry, can you give me a hard number for the amendments approved for 17.2 million decrease in expenditures due to vacancies? Is there somewhere I didn't see the number, like 300 vacancies, 200 vacancies, that we had 17.2 million decrease in expenditures?
No, I would have to do some research to give you the actual.
Was it a
look at the
5%
numbers.
variance and 10% variance?
I had run that for you all, I believe, earlier. I believe last year it was about 5.6, but don't hold me to that number. That is my best recollection, because when we adopted the budget, what we did is we squeezed out 4% of the budget so that, it would not add to the bottom line for this year, so.
Dr. Terry, I understand. I
Okay.
just would like to know
Sure.
just know the number of 17.2 million decrease, so we had to allocate that money somewhere and use it for something else. So I'm just curious to know the variance and the number of that 17.2 million that's on this financial report. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustees, any other questions? Please cast your vote. Oh, I'm sorry.
And the vote is just to approve?
Hold on 1 second. I
Or
think
is
you
there
just
amendment?
acknowledged trustee. It's to approve the motion as the main motion.
Okay.
Trustee Jones.
Now, I thought I'd raised a legal question that I don't believe has been addressed, Mr. President.
Okay, Jack, let me ask you a question. If we adopt this as it is today, and there are edits to this document after we adopt this, is there anything that this board can do to ensure that those edits are reflected in the comprehensive financial report?
If that's your intent, I assume we would bring them back to you.
You'd bring it back to the board.
Sure.
We'd say, we have edits, we'd like to amend the document. The board would take a vote on that.
Absolutely.
Okay?
That's what you...
And-
That's would be what we would do.
Fair enough, but,
I haven't had a chance to speak yet.
Okay.
well, I was raising a question that hadn't been addressed.
Okay.
That had previously been asked,
Trustee Morath.
but if I could.
So, are any of the changes material in any way? Are they typos? What are they?
Well, some of them are material in terms of some of the representation. Some of them are typos, some of them are just incomplete.
Can I have like an example of whether the degree of material? The reason I ask this is because there have been typos in previous, not typos, but sort of material errors that are fairly minor in nature. For example, during one of the annual financial reports, it indicated that the trustees were elected for 4-year terms, for example. And so that's a mistake, but it's not particularly material. So I'm just curious whether there's any reason to bring this thing back.
The issue isn't whether to bring it back. The issue is to make sure that what needs to be addressed is addressed going as you adopt it, that you've done the proper diligence to make sure that the document has been fully gone through so that all of those types of things, whether minor or material, are addressed.
Okay. So, Mr. President, I call a question.
Okay, the question's been called. Is there a second? Seconded by Trustee Bingham. All those in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand. And all those opposed? The motion passes unanimously. All those, please now cast your vote on the main motion.
Actually, it wasn't unanimous. I abstained.
Okay, can we make sure that that's reflected in the record? Please cast your votes.
Ms. Jones, are you voting?
Just bad governance.
The motion passes 8-0.
The next item is, well, you just adopted the main motion to approve the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2014. Now we're on to 7A14 to approve the monthly financial reports and the monthly tax report for the period ending September 30th, 2014. Consent item number 14, pulled by Trustees Foreman and Nuttall. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Bingham, and a second?
Second. Seconded
by Dr. Blackburn. Is there a discussion? Trustee Foreman.
Jim,
Yes.
it shows on page 1, $18 million over budget. Did I read that correctly?
Let me catch up here just a second.
Okay. It's hard for me to catch up too.
Okay, page 18?
No, 1.
Oh, page 1. Okay.
September revised budget. At the bottom. $18 million over.
Yes, that's the amended budget.
Right. So, did I read that correctly?
Yes.
18 million over budget.
Currently, well, what it is that the expenditures are 18 million more than our projected revenues at this time.
Can you maybe quickly just tell me just a couple of places where we've really overspent?
Well, we haven't overspent at this point. It's just that we have brought to you practically every month amendments. A lot of those amendments have been additional FTEs in terms of additional teachers, counselors from the original budget. And right now, we have not amended the revenue side. And we look at this every month, And I believe that if you look at the budget amendment, that number is probably a little bit higher, it's closer to 26 million. It's not uncommon in this district and other districts for the expenditures at points in time to be more than the revenue. But as you know, in this district for the last 3-4 years that I've been here, is that by the end of the year, we do contribute considerable amount of money to the fund balance. So I do expect that towards the spring, when we have a better feel for exactly what our revenue is going to do and what our expenditures are going to do. We do monthly variance reports that will come back, and we will reduce that amount, which we did last year. So I don't expect that to maintain itself by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, I've just looked at a couple of things. If you turn to page 2,
Okay?
Object Code 6121.
6120 what? 21?
Okay, which is overtime.
Correct.
I just looked at, we're already at 35.27% in a couple of months.
Correct.
And I'm just looking at this because I know you'll probably come back to the board. I looked at audit services, which is 6212, object code.
6212,
12.
audit services, yes.
We're at 44%
Yes.
already. If you look at, oh, and I love this one, 6439. We've already spent all of our money for elections for this year.
You must also remember that, the cash, if you were to do it on a percentage basis, evenly, you would say the cash flow should be, 1/12 every month. And we're showing you the September, so you would figure that, well, that cash flow and that percentage would be about 24%.
Right.
But the actual expenditures, like audited
more.
services,
Or more.
well, it's not an even flow is what I'm saying. So
Okay.
sometimes the expenditures come at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then there's no more expenditures. Sometimes the expenditures may come at the end of the year and drop off. So, to do a strict percentage as to what we spent is not necessarily, the best way to look at it.
But it's a way to look at it,
Yes,
right?
it is. Absolutely.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Foreman. Trustees, any other questions? Okay, please cast your votes.
The motion passes 8 voting yes.
You've just adopted the motion, thereby approving the monthly financial reports and the monthly tax report for the period ending September 30th, 2014. We're on to 7830 to approve an agreement with Mobile Express Capital Corporation for the placement of 8 automated teller machines at various district locations. No financial impact, 1-year term. Consent item number 30, pulled by Trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Bingham, and a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, is there any discussion? Okay, Trustee Foreman.
Yes, ma'am.
Wanda, how are you?
I'm great.
Good. At the board briefing, we talked about the fact that there was no competition in terms of trying to find an automatic teller machine. Did we look at competition, or are we still just presenting this one vendor?
What we're looking at, again, let me give you just a little background, I'll answer your question. So basically, the credit union was about to pull the machines because they said it was not enough activity. So they were charging a $2 surcharge per transaction. Mobile Express, which was the owner of the machines, came to us and said basically we'll leave them there and we'll reduce the transaction fee from $2 a transaction to $1.25 per transaction. Another entity was interested because it's such a low volume of activity, and I can provide you a spreadsheet with that information.
Well, you actually just gave me new information, because at the briefing, we didn't talk about Mobile Express being the owner of the machines that was currently there, or maybe I missed that.
I probably didn't say it very clearly.
Yeah.
But they're basically what it involves is that they'll leave the machines intact because they are the owner of the machines.
Okay.
Trustees, any other questions?
And I apologize for that.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 9-0.
You just adopted the motion, thereby approving an agreement with Mobile Express Capital Corporation for the placement of automated teller machines at various district locations with no financial impact and a one-year term. We're on to 7-837 to approve improvement plans for improvement required and formerly improvement required schools, no financial impact. Consent item number 37, pulled by Trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Bingham, and a second. Second by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, is there any discussion? Trustee Foreman.
Very quickly, because we did discuss this earlier, I still have some concerns, as I had expressed earlier, about some of the schools. And as I learned more, I think between Trustee Blackburn, Trustee Nuttall, and Trustee and myself, most of the IR schools belong in our district. And we need to do something about that. Superintendent Miles, we've often talked to you about an African American initiative. We don't get very much. This is a great opportunity for you to show us that we're going to fix what's in these schools, because the majority of these schools are majority African American. We need to fix that. And for the people who say throwing money at it is not the answer, well, I wish I had the $9 million that Samuel has, because I think that could help change some of the things that happen in our schools. It's not about throwing money. It's about putting the resources in place to try to give these children the opportunity that they need. Of course, I will be supporting this, but I'll be expecting the administration to change some of the things in terms of what's happening with these schools.
Trustees, any other questions? Trustee Nuttall.
I requested the African American Success Initiative, Superintendent Miles. I would like for the board to receive a copy of what are we doing with the African American Success Initiative for the 2014-2015 school year. I believe I requested that about 2 weeks ago. Thanks.
Trustees, any other questions? Please cast your votes. Hold on one second.
Motion passes 9-0.
You've just adopted the motion, thereby approving the improvement plans for improvement required and formerly improvement required schools with no financial impact. Now we're on to 7A42, to approve a resolution for participation in the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance and the Tarrant County Purchasing Cooperative Programs. No funding required over 2 years. Consent item number 42, pulled by Trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Bingham, and a second. Seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Trustee Foreman.
Hi, Kimmy. How are you? I'm good. Good. Is that your answer?
Yes. Good morning.
How many cooperative purchasing agreements do we have?
Approximately 14.
Approximately 14. And
Yes,
how much
ma'am.
do we spend?
Spend annually
Let me flip.
with the cooperative purchasing agreements?
Over a period of a year, like last year, I would say, it's kind of, we have a little difficult time tracking it, but we have different ones. And I'd say, especially since we have the office supplies, probably a good 30 million out of 500 million.
And how often do we test to ensure that we have the best pricing?
When we're looking at purchasing something off of a cooperative, we can actually look at all the different cooperatives if they have the same type services, or for instance, I always like to use the office supply one, is check all the different cooperatives and see which cooperatives are offering the best.
I guess I asked that question because it limits local businesses in many cases from participating with the district. Would you agree with that?
Not always.
Not always, but in many instances, right?
Most of the cooperatives, the ones that we use are local. I'm not going to say local, but the state of Texas. And most of the businesses that we do business with are Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Okay, off the cooperative purchasing?
Some of them, yes.
How are they funded?
Cooperative purchasing programs. Most of the cooperative purchasing programs are nonprofits. They actually are entity-based, if you will. Most of them are regional service centers that are through the state of Texas, the educational service centers, and they actually have that cooperative program within those service centers.
How do they make their money off the goods that come through them?
They typically will charge the vendor a
And
fee.
they charge them a percentage, correct?
Some of them do, yes.
And when you think that's passed on to us?
Maybe sometimes it is, and then maybe sometimes it isn't.
I think it is in many cases. And that's why I asked the question about how often do we test to make sure we're getting the best price. And I'm not talking about looking at another cooperative purchasing agreement. I'm talking about going to open market and looking to see if we're getting the best price. And we don't do that a lot, do we?
We do check on different pricing for different things, depending on what it is. I would say most of the time we're looking for services. Not all the time are we looking for specific widgets, if you will.
I'm more on the good side.
That's what I mean.
You know, I'm a goods person. So the services I kind of understand, but the goods is what I'm asking questions about.
Well, I would say typically we don't line item bid, if that's what you're asking, as far as because of the volume of the different types of items and widgets that we purchase.
Okay, and I'll get off of this because one of the things I have some concerns about us doing a lot of cooperative purchasing because I don't think we test open market. And I think you'll find that in some instances you can get better pricing based on a cooperative purchasing because there is a surcharge charged back to the vendor who's going to get their money. So I'd just like to see us not just depend on cooperative purchasing, but to test open market. Thank you.
Any other questions, trustees? Okay, please cast your votes.
Motion passes, 8 voting yes, 1 voting no.
Okay, you've just adopted the motion thereby approving a resolution for participation in the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance and the Tarrant County Purchasing Cooperative Programs with no funding required over 2 years. We're on to our final item, 7A43, to ratify and approve expenditures for two-way radios in the amount of $23,731.67. Consent item number 43, pulled by trustees Joyce Foreman and Bernadette Nuttall. Do I have a motion? Moved by trustee Bingham, and a second. Seconded by Dr. Blackburn. Trustees, any discussion? Okay, trustees, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, trustees, you just adopted the motion thereby approving to ratify and approve expenditures for two-way radios in the amount of $23,731.67. And trustees, this brings us to the close of our meeting. I do want to make sure that Superintendent Miles, Carmen Darville, Mr. Saladay, and Jim Terry get together so we can ensure that the policy that was passed earlier this evening as it relates to days is clarified. We know exactly the direction that we're moving. Thank you all very much. This concludes our agenda. Thank you everyone for coming. The time now is somewhere around 10. What time is it? Tell me now. We got to go.
10:41.
10:41. And this meeting is adjourned.